Justice for all.
This evening we had a closed session discussing one legal matter, and we had no reportable action from that session. On Sunday, February 9th, Councilmember Starbuck and I had a great deal of pleasure presenting a proclamation to Walt Manfrina on the occasion of his 100th birthday, and with people you haven't seen in many years in attendance. Yeah. And he knew everybody there. He just couldn't remember most of their names. This evening we have two presentations. We have the Friends of the Library System will present a donation check to the Lompoc Library Director, and from the Turducken Dinner Group. Where are they?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, that has been pulled. We didn't tell you about it.
It's really, this has been a tough agenda night for the mayor. Things aren't on it. Things are on it. Captain Lardner, are you here? Do you want to be pulled, or are you going to stay on? No. If you're here, I want to go forward with something that's on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I've asked if we make this presentation to you. We have an item later about the purchase, but this item is merely to keep you informed as to the selection that we're making, and I thought it was of adequate interest, so
come on down.
I wanted to share that information with you. I think it's good to be informed on these types of matters. So.
And I was just kidding you, Ed. I wouldn't chase you off. Yeah. Would you do me one favor and crank that podium around a little bit? No, that one. Just right there. You go.
You want me to sit down there?
No. We're going to make you stand up.
No problem. Just take a look at the PowerPoint. Just short, a couple of slides. But the Lompoc Police Department had to go from the Crown Victorias we've been using for many, many years. Actually, this is a vehicle that's been used across America for many years. Ford stopped making this vehicle. Unfortunately, they had no replacement at the time. There was a Dodge, Chevrolet, and Nissan, Toyota, Volvo, other products that were out there, but nothing that was compatible. So we started looking a couple of years ago. The process was pretty long. We had quite a few officers go down and take a look at the different vehicles that were available, to include the Chevy Caprice, which is what you've probably seen one of our officers driving around. We have one of those cars. We also involved fleet manager, finance, radio shop, fleet mechanic, range staff, IT, and officers. And looking at the officers, we have Officer Morgan, who's 6'7" or 8", all the way down to a shorter officer. So shorter than 6'8". So we had a lot of people we had to think about getting in and out of these vehicles all the time. We had to think about the comfort and the safety. Unfortunately, you see that vehicle at the bottom, that's a Santa Maria police car that was wrapped around a pole. These things do happen. We had to think of the health tool considerations. If you'll notice, a lot of our officers are now walking around with what we call load-bearing vests. So instead of wearing the gear that I'm wearing around my waist, all this equipment, we now have gone to, with the option, our new chief, who's allowing officers to take this gear and put it on a load-bearing vest to try and alleviate some of the health considerations of back problems over the years. Getting in and out of a car dozens of times a day, foot pursuits. We had 2 foot pursuits last Monday in a matter of 10 minutes, which took all the officers to go out there. So when you're thinking about the health tool considerations, officers getting in and out of cars, not only the driver, but we're having a lot of officers that we're training all the time, so we have field training officers. So we have 2 officers, one on the passenger side, one on the driver's side. Include with that the mobile digital computers that we have in the cars and the tight space that's in there. A lot of things to think about. Long-term maintenance costs. What's it going to cost to get a different type of vehicle? How are we going to sustain this vehicle for maintenance, for fleet? We got to think about diesel, hybrid, nitrogen, and gas, and taking into consideration that it doesn't always matter what we have available in the city of Lompoc, but what we have available in other cities. We do a lot of mutual aid. to include going all the way up to Monterey County, going down to Ventura County, depending on what they request from us, because we also request aid from them. So we have to think about refueling vehicles when we're outside of our city. A car versus SUV. What we were finding with the cars, top left-hand corner, is the car was really just too small for us. It just wasn't working. Our K9 vehicle right now is currently the bottom center vehicle. Bottom left is what we eventually went with, the SUV. We had to look at the replacement costs and the equipment availability. That Chevy Caprice we have right now, even though it had been out for a year, the manufacturers did not have equipment for the inside of the vehicle. We were finding that the cages, the plastic seats in the back, a lot of this equipment just wasn't, they weren't thinking ahead. When Ford stopped making the Ford Crown Victoria, they just weren't thinking, the manufacturers that were out there that made these I forgot what it's called, not the OEM products. The life of the replacement vehicles, reusable equipment. What could we take from the Crown Victoria and put it into a new vehicle? Nothing would fit in the Dodge or the Chevrolet or even the new Ford that came out. Ford eventually came out with a car the following year. Nothing would fit in there, so we can't transfer everything. We also have to think about the space, the trunks, and you'll see a picture of the trunk of the car here. Trunk of the car on the bottom left-hand side sometimes is what a patrol car looks like, especially when you have, unfortunately like us, 2 officers in one car, because we're training officers continuously that you have 2 bags in the back, you have all the equipment that we carry, flares, everything imaginable. The SUV in the top right-hand corner is typically what you're seeing as far as carrying cargo. So the replacement plan, we had to think about what we had in our fleet life, the future needs of the department, all the electronics. Currently we have a mobile digital computer system inside the car that isn't working very well, along with a video system that isn't working very well. So we have to see where we're going in the future with either tablets or laptops or what's going to happen with us. 2-wheel drive versus 4-wheel drive. It may not seem very important here, but we do get a lot of calls down into the riverbed. So we had to take that into consideration. The interior size, the ability to use the old equipment. Funding. Did we have enough money to pay for these new vehicles? We currently need 6 vehicles. We do have enough money in the budget. The way it's working with fleet and finances is they have enough money to cover the cost of the new vehicles plus additional monies that we're going to need for the new equipment. And the cost savings there for the new equipment is when we have to replace these vehicles, the Ford is going to continue to make the current vehicles that they have now for a long time period, just like they did the Crown Victoria for over 20 years. So we're eventually going to be able to use the equipment we're putting in the SUVs now in future SUVs. The final selection was this car right here. This is the Ford SUV, basically. It's in a Ford Taurus frame, which is a car frame, but it has an SUV above it. It's a utility interceptor. You've probably already seen it being driven a lot by the CHP. They just purchased 1,800 of them. Alameda Police Department purchased 6 Chevy Caprices. As soon as they got them, outfitted them for their patrol officers, they almost immediately, within a month or so, had to take them out of service from patrol use and give them to the detectives because they found that car just wasn't working, and they went to 6 of these. And they absolutely love them for space and the long-term effects of the officers getting in and out continuously. That's it. Short and sweet. Do you have any questions?
Councilmember Starbuck?
What about bikes?
Bicycles or motorcycles?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about cheap fleet replacement, quiet, easy maintenance, any hike can ride them, you know?
Just about. We actually do have 6 bicycles, different sizes, different officers. They're ranged, and actually a couple of them were donated to us, but they cost about $1,800 each when they're fully outfitted. And we do use them from time to time. You're not going to see them as often as you'd like to, but officers on a graveyard shift, a lot of times, as long as they know how to operate the bicycle, which has lights and sirens. It has all the equipment that they would need to go out there and use it at nighttime to look for burglars, to just go through the alleys, go through apartment complexes, and nobody can see them or hear them. It's very stealth. But we do have bicycles.
Councilmember Homdahl?
Yeah, it's good to hear this. The Chevy Caprice was the rear-driven one back in the 80s. Was one of the hottest cars out there, and then they stopped making it, and it took a while for you got to the Ford because the Caprice that came out with front-wheel drive just didn't work out as well, didn't have quite the control. So I know what you were going through because I drove a Caprice. I know the county had a bunch that got burned up in that fire in the 80s. Your vest is very interesting. My son's in the Army, and he has to wear a vest. Now he's got back problems, and shoulder problems, and everything else getting in and out of Humvees with a 60-pound vest. I don't know what your vests were, but in the military, they weigh 60 pounds. They wear them all the time when they get out. So having something easy to get in and having it worked right, I think that's an excellent idea. So I'm glad you're looking at that. And I've seen a lot of these SUVs on the road, and it looks like very comfortable and nice for the driver.
Yes, this is going to be a complete change from what everybody's used to in our community, other than the two Tahoes we already have. And we're not going with the Tahoes because we're finding long-term they're a little more costly for maintenance cost and for the cost of the vehicle.
Councilmember Lingle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Captain Lardner, I can ask this, I was going to ask this question during the agenda item, but maybe you can answer it now.
Yes, sir.
At any one time, we have 2 patrol cars on duty, is that correct?
Our minimum manning on a day shift is 3 officers and a supervisor. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that'd be 4. So my question is, why do we have 6 vehicles? Why are we going to be purchasing 6?
Because, well, they have to be replaced for the ones that we already have that are wearing out. It's not just necessarily the mileage that is on the cars. Sometimes the cars we have one car that has about 114,000 miles on it. It's not necessarily the miles driven, because as we all know, technology has changed and cars can last a long time. It's the idle time. For example, the foot pursuit that happened, these cars just sit. We get out of the vehicle, you run real fast, you try and turn it off, somebody comes up and turns your car off for you. A lot of times you're on traffic stops, so there's a lot of wear and tear. So the reason we're getting 6 is to replace the cars that we already have. We currently have 11 cars in our fleet right now, and we're constantly using them. So what we have, for example, today, we have the Safe Routes to School grant going on, which is 2 officers in the morning. So 2 officers are patrolling the extra schools, the elementary schools that are out there through a grant that we have through Ms. Costa. Then in the afternoon, we also have 1 to 2 officers. During the day, we also have what we call the PRCS officer. That's Officer Shrivers, who's dealing with the individuals who are assigned to probation from the early release from the prisons. We have 1 officer just assigned to that. We also have activities that are going on continuously through the different grants that we have, either through Office of Traffic Safety or some other grant that might be available to us. So we constantly have officers there, but they're not assigned to patrol. The patrol officers at minimum manning is 3 and 1. We have officers assigned, there's 5 officers and a supervisor assigned to each shift. But when you take into consideration sick time, vacation time, training, things like that, everybody's not there all the time. Today, everybody was there, so we have 5 officers and a supervisor, that's 6. K-9 officer, right there, so his vehicle is assigned to him. We can only use that vehicle for him.
So that's my question is,
Yes, sir.
the 6 vehicles actually are in use, because we only have 3 patrol officers on at any one time. That doesn't mean we only have 3 cars in use.
Well, a minimum of 3 officers and a sergeant.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a minimum of 4 during the day. At night shift, that changes to 5 and 1. So then you have 6 at nighttime. Plus you have the extra patrols. You might have the gang narcotics officers out there. A lot of different activities are going on where people are coming in. You also have to think about, we have to transport people to juvenile hall or to Santa Barbara County Jail. So we're bringing officers from home on an overtime basis because we don't have enough manning to transport people down there. So that takes another patrol car.
Okay, thank you.
If I could add real quick, Mr. Lingle, the vehicles are on a rotation cycle, and so after a number of years, a number of miles, then we replace that vehicle, and it so happens that in the 13-15 budget, there are 3 vehicles being replaced in the 13-14 and 3 vehicles being replaced in 14-15, and so we're lumping them together, buying them at the same time, so that they'll be delivered mid-year between the 2 budgets, and we'll be able to account for them together for the 2-year cycle. We're able to do that at a better cost than buying them 3 and 3.
Okay, thank you.
Good job. And we buy them on the state contract, which is why they're not bought locally. City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few things to report on. First of all, I attended the League of California City Manager meeting in Long Beach, and just wanted to share there was some useful information on budgeting, on risk management, on some human resource issues and trends in the workplace and pension obligations and other legislative action. So some good information coming out of that. Doing some researching right now on a couple different programs on down payment assistance program for home buyers, try to get more people moving into homes and having the pride of home ownership, as well as home energy renovation opportunity program. And with both of those programs, I'll be coming back to you in upcoming meetings, hopefully with presentations and endorsements on those programs. The 8 city managers and administrators of the different cities in Santa Barbara County met last week to discuss some emergency procedures, drought conditions, and a few other topics. And included in that was the 211 system. And I believe the council members received a letter, as all cities and councils of the various cities within Santa Barbara County did, asking for our, I guess, position or response or impressions on their findings and recommendations regarding 211 countywide. I'll be preparing a draft response for your review and acceptance. We also had another meeting at Vandenberg Air Force Base to discuss shared services. I'd say that's making pretty good progress, and definitely in terms of the low-hanging fruit, things we can easily accomplish there. Some of the more involved sharing opportunities, I think, are going to be bigger challenges to achieve and take longer to get done, but those are the items that really have the bigger pay potential, but we'll continue to try to mine our way through that. But I'm happy to say there are a few things that are low-hanging fruit and able to accomplish fairly easily, including with some shared recreational services and the like. So some good things to help expand services to our citizens and to those that are serving on base. I've continued personally my tours of different city facilities, most recently with Purchasing Warehouse, Fire Station 1, TAP TV Studios, Information Systems. So I'm getting close to being done. I've almost covered all of them. I got just a couple spots here and there to get through that. I'm going to ask our Assistant City Administrator, Teresa Gallivan, if she'll come up and chat on one topic.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, audience and viewers, Teresa Gallivan, Economic Development Director, Assistant City Administrator, and I would like to give a brief update on the monitoring policy and provide some clarification on the Human Services Commission's role in reviewing that policy. Last week, the Human Services Commission held a special meeting on February 11th to receive public comment, and they also gave their comments on the draft monitoring policy. We received quite a few comments, and the ad hoc committee will be meeting soon to review all those comments and how they can be integrated into the policy. Our hope is to meet later this week, if not next week, and then bring the policy back, the draft policy back to council. So we are moving forward to review the changes that were suggested through that process. During that special meeting, members of the commission also asked for clarification on their role in reviewing the policy, and they cited several sources of information that were misleading about their role or their level of expertise expected in regard to monitoring the policy. So I just wanted to take a moment to put on record what the intent was in them reviewing this and share those concerns and clarify that for the community and council feedback. So in particular, they cited a letter from our city attorney to the grand jury dated December 30th, 2013, and called out that there was a particular passage in the letter that they found somewhat misleading and wanted clarification upon. And in the letter to the grand jury, it does say, quote, depending on when the Human Resources Commission approves the revisions, that is, of the draft policy, the proposed audit policy could return to the council. And I'd just like to clarify that the letter also states that the proposed audit policy would be returned to City Council for further consideration and adopted. So that language is in there. It was not the intent of council or the city attorney or staff to put the Human Services Commission in a position of final approval on the policy, or to provide expertise or any expectation that they would have expertise in monitoring all the different rules and regulations and funding sources that we oversee. The Human Services Commission is an advisory board, and as such, I understand it was Council's intent to encourage Human Service Commission feedback and recommendations and additional opportunities for public comment in the process prior to bringing it back to Council for final approval. Final approval would be with Council. Again, to clarify, the Human Services Commission is an advisory board, and the role requested of them, as I understand it, is to review, receive comment, and provide any recommendations that they feel comfortable giving on the policy. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's everyone's understanding, correct? Bob? Dirk? Ashley? Yes, that is all of our understanding, that they're making suggestions to come back to us, because the more eyes that look at it, the better it's going to be. And we appreciate them doing some of the work so we don't have to do it.
Thank you. Also, just a couple quick updates on what I think are some good news out of our police department. Number one, as you know, we used to have a pretty sizable graffiti problem. We still are waging the battle, but it looks like we're winning the war overall. But there have been 10 new cases since January of 2014 and some 400 plus graffiti tags. But the department's still being vigilant in what they're doing, and they're very much on top of bringing people to justice that are involved in that level of not so acceptable activity. So anyway, I wanted to thank the chief in that regard and the efforts of his department, as well as just announcing something that the chief was sharing with me, the crime stats, including that 2013 we were able to finish with 0 homicides in that year, and that's the first time in 9 years that we were able to claim that kind of victory. So again, thanks to the police department, thanks to the citizens out there, because obviously it's there's an overall reduction in crime of 6.5%. Violent crimes are down, property crimes are up somewhat, and that kind of happens in economic cycles like this, but nonetheless, overall the trend's downward, and that means good efforts on the part of the police department, good efforts on the part of citizens out there in the community doing their part, and just want to continue to stress to our citizens how important it is that they are our eyes and ears. We can't be around to see everything, and so their active involvement and their caring about their neighborhoods are critical factors to helping us keep our crime rates down. So thank you very much to all concerned, and I believe that concludes my report. Thank you.
I think we have one more item of business.
Why, thank you, Mayor. There is a vacancy that needs to be filled in terms of an appointment to the Oversight Board for the successor activities to the redevelopment agency. So I believe that's up to you to make an appointment in that regard, and I throw myself at the mercy of your service.
Well, I'd like to commend the city administrator for volunteering, because the next person in line was probably me. So I hereby officially appoint you as my designated representative to the Oversight Board, and I think that old thing comes forward. May God have mercy on your soul.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, just if I could make sure that the public understands, the state law that set up the Dissolution and Redevelopment Agencies created this Oversight Board, and it's your appointment as mayor of every city that has a redevelopment agency. So that's what's happening tonight, is the mayor is making the appointment.
I have fulfilled my legal responsibilities so I can sleep better tonight, because there was a concern there. They have a meeting coming up, so we need to have all of our representatives there. Just with regard to that 211 item, I would say that in October, Teresa and I, when she was interim city administrator, attended the mayors and managers meeting, which is kind of the same thing, except it's all of us. And there was a universal understanding among all the mayors and managers that we weren't willing to contribute to the county's 211 system. We had our own things to deal with, and that's a social issue, and that's their responsibility, not ours. So that was universal among all the mayors and all the managers. Staff requests and announcements, Madam Clerk.
Not tonight.
Hey, she said something new. Yay. Okay. Oral communications. This is your opportunity to talk to us for 5 minutes on any subject. If you are here to testify on an item that's appearing later and you can wait, please do so. And if not, come on down.
Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, audience, Ken Austini, Lompoc Valley Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau, back for my monthly report. How many of you have seen our ad on KEYT? There's one. That's it. Hopefully, I'll send you guys the schedule. We've done a 30-second ad on KEYT trying to promote Lompoc and visitors coming to town, trying to reach south into Ventura County also. So I think it's a great ad, but I'll send you the schedule when it's aired because you got to kind of watch for it. Well, it's on our website, actually. You can go right to our website and pull it up.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, City Administrator. Can we post that to our homepage?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we share it wherever we can because I think it came out very well. So, again, it's not very long, but it's promoting Lompoc and getting people to come visit Lompoc is our intent. Okay. I'm going back a ways here now. So on January 2nd, I attended Coffee with Bob. That's my first attendance. Actually, my second attendance at one of the coffees. I think attended with Dirk's a long time ago. It was very interesting to hear the kind of input you get from the community members. So that was very interesting. On the 3rd of January, right here in City Hall, Lompoc hosted the Tri-County Broadband Task Force grant application meeting. Folks from Ventura County, San Luis County, and Santa Barbara County met here to talk about that. The grant has been submitted, and initial feedback is that's probably looking very good at getting the grant funding to pursue that increased broadband speed in the Tri-Counties. On the 9th of January, we had a mixer at Northside Shopping Center. Hopefully some of you made it to that. I think you did. Always encourage council members to attend those. That same evening, we had an Economic Development Committee meeting. I think that's the meeting where Janelle took over as the new chairperson for the Economic Development Committee from Steve. On the 13th of January, a Criterium bike race meeting. That's coming along, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as I get further down the list. That same afternoon, I attended the Allen Hancock Public Safety Training Center signing of the agreement with the Petroleum Education Council. A huge milestone for them. I don't know if any of you have seen the YouTube video they just put out about that, about 5 minutes. Very, very good. We put it on our website so people can see that also. On the 14th of January, I attended the Vandenberg Air Force Base newcomers briefing. Usually there's 2 of those a month. It's amazing the number of folks that are still coming in and out of Vandenberg. So I'd like to tell them about what's going on in the community. That same evening, I attended a mixer in Santa Barbara at the Foundry. If any of you know where the Foundry is, it's kind of a fancy art museum down kind of in the funk zone where U.S. Airways was putting on a presentation about doing advertising in their in-flight magazine. It's something I looked at, but I think a little bit expensive for our blood for 1 month. $4,500 for a one-page ad is a little bit steep, but and I think it's going to be dominated by Santa Barbara anyhow. So, but just something of interest. We're continuing to look at stuff like that. On the 15th of January, I attended a C3H meeting. I'm sure all of you are familiar with that in regards to homeless and panhandling. That's moving along now. The flyers are out, and we continue to meet. There's a meeting tomorrow with that, and I know that Councilmember Lingle and Costa both have attended some of those meetings. Again, on the 16th of January, again, the Vandenberg Air Force Base quarterly awards. I attend those whenever I can. That night, I attended Coffee with Dirk. It was very interesting to hear some of the comments from folks. And I know Administrator Miller was there and got to hear a lot from some of the community. And then later that evening, he also attended a mixed ambiance photo gallery and spa here in town. The next morning, I was on KUHL K-Time with Ben Hayes. He was asking me about what's good going on in Lompoc, and so I had about 10 minutes to tell him everything I could think of, and had a great time. And after I was done, he goes, "Well, you really are excited about Lompoc." I go, "Yeah, I am." So, and I know some folks actually heard it. So that afternoon, we had an open house at Carnahan Therapy. The 20th of January, Martin Luther King Day. Did some mentoring activities at the Boys and Girls Club, teaching them how to plant things. We'll see how that goes. I don't know, some of the plants were pretty ragged looking, but we tried. 23rd of January, Mixer at Sunset. I know some of you attended that also. It's always a good one. On the 27th of January, the P4 Subcommittee for Education and Libraries. I know Mr. Weinmiller spoke about that a few minutes ago. That was a subcommittee dealing strictly with library and education issues. Teresa Gallivan was part of that, the librarian from the Bays, librarian from Lompoc. And earlier in the month, we also had a P4 meeting in regards to the pool, golf course, and bowling centers on base. So those are all part of the bigger committee that I know the mayor's part of and other city administrative staff. On the 27th of January, attended the Allen Hancock Foundation orientation. I'm now a member of their foundation board, so now I'm orientated. On the 28th, I also had a meeting with Joanne Plummer to talk about the upcoming agriculture summit and planning for that event. A few more, I'm moving on. 29th of January, we had our joint luncheon with Santa Maria Chamber of Commerce at Vandenberg Air Force Base, where the wing commander provided an update as to activities on the base, not only for the last year, but upcoming with launches and stuff for this year. Then on the 30th of January, I attended the going away function for Warden Ives at the Federal Correctional Complex. I'm going to sorely miss that man. He has done a lot of great things to help the community, always there to help whenever you need it. So hopefully his replacement will be equally as cooperative and helpful to the community. Sure hope so. 31st, I attended the promotion ceremony for Major General Raymond, who's the new 14th Air Force Commander. He's now Lieutenant General. And then later that day was the change of command for General Helms leaving and General Raymond taking over. On the 5th of January, I attended the Western Association of Chamber Executives Conference in Los Angeles and was very fortunate to be a graduate of their 3-year academy. I started that when I first came to the chamber, and graduation ceremony was on the 7th, so very great program. I'm glad I was able to be a part of that. On the 10th of February, we had a criteria meeting up at the Public Safety Training Center. Some exciting things could be happening. I don't want to say too much about the racetrack up there, but hopefully something's going to work out with that and be part of the criterium event. Also, some of you may know around the community, we're working with a company called CGI Communications. They're updating videos on our website. And I think they've talked to the city, I know already, but they've been around town and are trying to get some advertising to help pay for this update, so it won't cost the chamber anything. On the 12th of February, attended Boys and Girls Club Community Council, which I'm a member of. So is Councilmember Oil, I think. You come once in a while. Yeah, that's okay. And today, actually, we had the first meeting of the Visit Lompoc Tourism Investment District, and they elected their board members. So now things are in, they approved their bylaws, and now they're starting to move along. I'm an advisor on their board, so they've got things in place and are now moving forward and making their plans. We're going to meet on a monthly basis, and they'll publicly notice those meetings as they did this last one. So also on the 12th, I'll back up one step. I attended the P4 meeting again with Administrator Weinmiller, the mayor, many of the city staff at Vandenberg, the bigger group that met to talk about these initiatives in partnering with the community and with Vandenberg. So I think there's some exciting things that are going to come from that, because there is some things that definitely can work. This week, we also have a luncheon on the 20th. Just a couple things real quick. Talking about the criterium, Sheldon Smith and Carolyn White will be talking about that and what's going on there. Also that evening, we're going to have a presentation on a trip to Tuscany at 6 p.m. at the Veterans Memorial Hall. There's some flyers out in the lobby. If you're interested, please come by and listen. And if you're interested, you can sign up and go with us. And also, last thing, we're in the very early planning stages. I'm working with all the tourism groups out of Santa Barbara, Solvang, Buellton, San Ynez Valley, in the anniversary of the 10 years of Sideways. That's coming up in October. So we're meeting. We've had one meeting, and we're going to meet some more and do some joint planning and some activities that are going to happen around that event. So it should be fun. So watch for more. Questions?
Ken, CGI has already talked to the mayor and said, hey, we do these for cities and mayors too. And I had a presentation from them today. Did you go through a vetting process when you picked them out?
No, they've done it before. They did the last one for us.
So you found them to be helpful and
right. And we were happy with, I mean, I wasn't here when the last one was done, but what was there was fine. It was just time for an update. They actually contacted us and said, hey, look, it's time to update these. So I said, yeah, I think you're probably right. We updated our website, so let's update the videos.
Okay. And by the way, thanks for the help with the P4. It's nice to have somebody with insider knowledge at Vandenberg when we're chatting with all those guys, because it's nice to get things validated. Councilmember Costa.
Mr. Trustee, I'm just having trouble finding the video on the website. So can you send us the link for the video when you get a chance?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. Okay.
Yeah, and that video from Hancock, I just got it also, so if anybody would like it, I'm happy to send the link to everyone. And it's a really great video. It is really good.
I agree.
Any other questions?
I gotta get the,
I got a picture.
real pleased that you brought up the word of sideways. It's a 10-year anniversary that people quite don't understand. They say, well, it's just one of those movies, but Lompoc got more hits out of what happened on Sideways than any place else, and the wine industry got more advertising because of that. I talked to a family, or two people at the wine ghetto this weekend, and they're from Irvine, and they said they just seen it. Now, he's 20-some years old, but he was only 12 when it came out. And so now you got the second and third generations are starting to watch it, and they're learning about wine. You know, there's wineries, a lot of the wineries didn't think much of it, but it got more people involved and young people involved. It changed the drinking of wine from 40 years to 21 years and up. And that's kind of one of the interesting things I see in that. To follow up with a few other things, I don't know if you have got the new dates, is that at the kickoff at the Space Training Center at Hancock will be the 8th of May and the 10th of May for the general public. So that's when they're going to have their final open house. I got that last week.
Right.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, Mr. Ostini, with your great influence on the 10th anniversary of Sideways, do you think you could get that scene that was shot on Lemon Street moved to maybe Anacapa?
Santa Barbara probably liked that, actually, because then they're really trying to capitalize on the Sideways, considering they really weren't much of a role in the movie. They really want to capitalize on this anniversary.
Well, I'm sure we can find some guy to run down Anacapa for him.
Well, I think it's a good idea that we had it. You got to advertise. We had 5 scenes in Lompoc, and you got what everybody remembers.
Yeah, I'm sad to say that my tow truck that was in that scene that we got repainted just for the scene because they didn't tell us what was in the scene, in embarrassment was left town. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
James Rasmussen, 1327 Crown Circle. I own a tract that's 73 homes on V and Laurel called Laurel Crossing, and I happen to live in one of the houses at 1327 Crown Circle. Right next to us is a commercial industrial building which has Ohana CrossFit in it. Since we've moved in September, noise from Ohana CrossFit is just unbearable at this point. I've made a complaint with code enforcement, and I've been told from code enforcement that it's out of his hands, that I need to go to the police department and file police reports. I have filed at least 20 police reports, to the point where the gal that answers the phone at the police department hears my voice and kind of goes, not you again. I've talked to planning department, which they keep promising me they're going to do something, but every month I call, it just keeps getting pushed off and pushed off. I've met with the owner and the police department together. I'm really, I don't know what else to do, so I finally said, I guess I need to come and ask you guys to help me here. Loud music,
the pinnacle of the problem really kind of struck Halloween. Halloween was a party from 5 a.m. until midnight. They had hired a DJ, and the police would come, and they would shut the DJ off. 30 minutes later, DJ going again. Call the police shut them off, and then 30 minutes later, there goes the DJ again. It's a CrossFit gym, which they have free weights, they lift them in the air, and then they drop them on the ground. My house is 10 feet from the wall that the CrossFit gym is in, and the vibration at 5 o'clock in the morning vibrates you out of the bed. They go on a typical basis 7 days a week. They start at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they end about 9 o'clock at night. And I just don't know what else to do except for to implore you guys to please help me something. I've called the mayor several times, and he's been out. I just don't know what else to do. So if anything you guys can do, I really appreciate it.
City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just to assist with, to have you have the information that I have, my office is now involved with this particular issue, and we're pursuing, and I understand the frustration because of when it happens, and I know it'll never be able to be fast enough in what we're doing, and I understand that, but we are pursuing the legal framework that we have to be able to do something about it.
Thank you. That help you?
Yeah, I mean, realize that I moved in September, and it's now February, and so maybe fast enough isn't fast enough, but I mean, it seems like in that period of time you could have gotten something done with it, so.
We're working on it now.
Is there any date or anything that I can, rest my head on that?
Something very shortly is going to be happening in terms of the city taking an action administratively.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Okay, anyone else? For all communications.
Mayor, Council. My name is Jim Mosby. I'm the owner of the private recreation fields east of Lompoc, and I was asked to come read a letter from a group of kids, and they have their picture of these kids who have a private club team, well, had one on my fields. And the letter is signed by the 18 children and 33 of the parents, and they wrote it in English and Spanish for you guys. Anyhow, it starts out, to whom it may concern, we are the parents and children of FC Lompoc soccer team, and we are part of the Lompoc community. We are working families who work to meet our family's basic needs, and any recreational activity is extra money some of us don't have. Our coaches are volunteers and don't charge the children to be a part of FC Lompoc Club. Therefore, in order to pay for the team's league tournaments, all the team's coaches, members, and parents do fundraisers to help cover the costs. Mr. Jim Mosby has been a great supporter of our team, and with this letter on behalf of the FC Lompoc Soccer Club, we would like to let the City of Lompoc know how Mr. Jim Mosby has been supporting the Lompoc youth in our community. Last fall, 2013, our team was left without a field due to community parks being used by local association renting the public parks soccer fields. The delegate of the local Lompoc Association asked the team to leave and the soccer fields, and since the FC Lompoc team wasn't part of their league, the team had no access to the fields for fall or for the rest of the league season. At that time, our team's coaches, Mr. Daniel Lemus, Mr. Rogelio Gonzalez, and Ricardo Here, approached Mr. Mosby to see if we could use the soccer fields at River Park. Mosby not only let us use the soccer fields, but he didn't charge us. He told us we would use it for free. Mr. Mosby's only condition is that the children pick up the trash after each practice or practice game, and for the children to get good grades in school. We are very fortunate to have found Mr. Mosby because our children get to practice soccer fields in a field that is well kept, which has no gopher holes and has a clean porta potty. Where the field is located, we don't bother anyone or any farmers, and at times the children are so into practicing soccer they don't want to leave the field. With the FC Lompoc team's signatures, we plead that the fields remain open. Mr. Mosby And the FC Lompoc coaches share the same mission, which is to keep our community youth busy in a positive way all year long and to do what the children love best, which is to play soccer. Like Mr. Mosby said, that is 18 less children in the Lompoc community streets. We once again plead that the fields remain open for today, tomorrow, and our future. Lompoc children, thanks you, the team and coaches, players, and parents. These team is ranked in the state cup in the top 10 in the state. They represent Lompoc. They've come to the community, and the way they found me is they were threatened to be arrested when they were playing in fields in town. They went to the parks office, tried to get fields. They said, we don't have any fields for you guys. Their home fields were then registered in Santa Barbara. It's very difficult for these kids to leave and go to practice in Santa Barbara. These are a great group of kids. They're U12 kids. They were in tears when they found out they had no more place to go. And I'm asking you guys, and the parents and the children are asking if you can try to find them a place where they can go to play. And a place maybe they could call home fields. These are all children of Lompoc. So I give you these letters and signatures and their photos. Thank you.
Jim? Jim? Yeah, was there any change at the Board of Supervisors today?
None that I know of. We're not done yet, though. Thank you.
Absolutely. We are surely not. Okay, anyone else for oral communications? Seeing no one rise, we'll close oral communications and we'll come back to the consent calendar. And we'll have a little reading, so bear with me. Item number 1, approval of the minutes of the special council meeting of January 28th, 2014. Item number 2, approval of expenditures for payroll in the amount of $1,094,000, a voucher register for $417,000, a voucher register for $447,000, and I would note that in the second voucher register we have a check to the Regional Water Quality Control Board for our annual permit for $22,000. Think what we could do with that. State took our money. Electronic payments in the amount of $4,720,000, manual checks in the amount of $6,000, and utility credit refunds in the amount of $395, and Councilmember Costa has an announcement.
Mayor Lynn, do you have the voucher number?
Oh, in about 10 seconds.
Just to clarify, I think that there was some confusion in the public that I saw on a Lompoc Record blog comment. My job is, I'm employed by the Lompoc Hospital. I work for a nonprofit underneath the umbrella of the Lompoc Hospital, and as such, as Captain Lardner mentioned, we manage the Safe Routes to School grant. And so on a quarterly basis or so, we submit invoices for the activities that are done at my organization, and then we are refunded for that. So due to that, I will be abstaining from check number
318006.
318006 in the amount of approximately $63,000 I will be abstaining from. Thank you.
Item number 3, vacation of a public utility easement at 1213 East Ocean Avenue, Lompoc Radiation Oncology Center, and this is a utility easement that goes in basically into the center of the property from Ocean Avenue. Item number 4, the long-term hangar lease agreement at the Lompoc Airport for James McGregor, which is releasing a hangar that he formerly owned that has now become city property. Final acceptance of project number FY12-S-3, the 3-step cap seal and slurry seal project. I would commend the staff. We had a contract amount of $1,137,000, and we had a contingency fund of $142,000, of which only $5,167 was used. So very good contract management. So we have basically $137,000 going forward to another project. Item number 6, award of the contract to purchase utility police interceptor models in the amount of $198,000, and those were the ones that Captain Lardner spoke about earlier. And equipment in the amount of $34,506, because these won't take the equipment from the old vehicles. Item number 7, No, that was it. It rolls over. Okay. Is there any item on here a council member would like to pull? Council, seeing nobody, could we have a motion, please?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
And a second.
A second.
And is there any discussion? Seeing no lights, could we vote, please? That passes 5-0. Thank you. Now we move to item number 7, the new business for the successor agency, approval of the park recreation priority list for the use of available 2010 bond proceeds.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and members of the public. Staff is here tonight to request the council approve a Parks and Recreation priority list for projects that could be funded with the 2010 redevelopment agency bond funds. To provide a little background, on June 7, 2013, the successor agency received the notice of completion from the Department of Finance. This notice triggered several requirements from the successor agency, 2 of which were the submittal of the long-range management plan within the following 6-month period and the release of bond funding that had been previously prohibited from use. On September 16, 2013, Finance staff submitted the Recognized Obligation Payment Schedule, known as the ROPS, to the Oversight Board for approval, which identifies how redevelopment funds will be spent to wind down projects and pay administrative costs for the following 6-month period, which was January through June 2014. The bond funds now available were also listed on the ROPS for approval from the Oversight Board and submittal to the State Department of Finance for use by the successor agency. During this meeting, the Oversight Board requested the successor agency weigh in on the recreational projects to be funded with the remaining bond funds. They requested a recreation priority list be established by the successor agency. This priority list needed to meet with the funding restrictions of the bond funds as well as redevelopment, and is to be presented to the Oversight Board to ensure any future use of the bond funds on the ROPS were a valid priority of the successor agency. To ensure that, staff included as much public participation as possible from the Community, Economic Development Committee, and Parks and Recreation Commission, who serve as an advisory board to the City Council. A public needs assessment hearing was noticed, publicized, and held on January 8, 2014. From that meeting, the priority list of projects was prepared by Recreation staff and is here before you tonight for approval with a recommendation of the Parks and Recreation Commission. This list does not exclude other projects being added to the existing priorities that the public and the Commission have already identified, if Council so desires. However, to be considered with this particular funding source, any proposed addition must meet the restrictions and requirements of the redevelopment agency funding and the bond project restrictions. However, it should be noted that the approximately $745,000 available in funding may only be able to accomplish priorities 1, 2, and 3 at this time. During the next 6-month period from July 1st, 2014 through December 31st, 2014, staff expects to accomplish priorities 1 and 2 and to utilize 20% of the remaining available bond funds to accomplish design work, a cost analysis, and other associated pre-development work. In the following period, or January 1st, 2015 through June 2015, the actual work on priority 3 would occur. At the time the cost analysis is completed and staff has cost associated with the project, we would come back to council for final review and approval to move forward with the improvements on priority 3, so you will see this project again. On a parallel but separate path, successor agency staff will be exploring a course of action that would result in the City of Lompoc and the successor agency entering into a contractual agreement that would allow a transfer of the bond proceeds from the successor agency to the city, which would result in a more streamlined process and would not require oversight board approval of the expenditures of future bond funds. You will be hearing more about this in the next item when the ROPS is presented to you for approval by the finance staff. At the September meeting mentioned earlier, the Oversight Board did approve funding for those items that were associated with the dehumidification project at the Aquatic Center and the additional items associated with the completion of the Dick DeWeese Community and Senior Center for the January 1st through January 30th, 2014 funding period, the current period. The ROPS for the next 6-month period is due to the Department of Finance on March 3rd, 2014, and the Oversight Board meeting to approve the ROPS has been scheduled with the Oversight Board for Monday, February 24th, 2014. In order to meet the schedule the state requires for submittal. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Joanne Plummer, who will take you through the PowerPoint presentation and answer any questions regarding the projects and the needs assessment hearing. Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, so thank you, Linda. What I'm going to do for you right now is go through the list of priorities so that everybody is on the same page. Again, before we go through this, it's important that everybody realize that by no means is this the only list of all the projects that we as staff and from what we heard from our consumers that need to be done. That list goes on and on and on. But as Linda mentioned, in looking at the parameters of this funding, the available amount of funds available, we narrowed it down to a list of 6 priorities. The Aquatic Center is listed as priority number 1 due to the fact that the project, the dehumidification project, is directly related to these funds. So a few last-minute items related to the dehumidification project. The existing project is the pool cover for the therapeutic pool and the play structure area, and then the replacement of the ceiling tracks for the glass enclosure. We have had one track that has been completely stopped, held completely open for quite some time. We've been working with our vendor. They are actually coming out this month to not only repair that one, but also do an assessment of the rest of the tracks to see if it's natural wear and tear or if it's a direct result of the fact that we did not have a dehumidification system. Priority number 2 is to complete the project at the Dick DeWeese Community and Senior Center, to add the truncated domes installed along the north side of the building and add 30 additional round tables, which seem to be our most popular use at the facility. The truncated domes, just for everybody's reference, are those metal grates that have little bumps on them. They're to allow individuals with disabilities the ability to tell whether or not they're entering into a parking lot or into a street area. Priority number 3 was one of a number of projects presented before the Parks and Recreation Commission for consideration. Based on the type of activities that are seen at Rye Memorial Park in the old section, as well as the fact that Rye Memorial Park is an iconic park in our community, the Parks and Recreation Commission placed this as its number 1 priority after the 2 existing projects of the Community Center and the Aquatic Center. In Rye Memorial Park, we would be looking at repairing the arch, turf renovation with new irrigation and gopher wire, restroom renovation and replacement, cover on the picnic shelter with barbecue pit improvements, stage improvements, parking lot improvements, a new playground for 2 to 5-year-olds, ADA accessibility to the playgrounds, a lighted flagpole to replace the damaged one that was once removed, and possible electrical utility upgrades in the park. As Linda mentioned, it would be the goal to request 20% of the remaining bond funds to be used to do an assessment of the cost analysis, the design of the facility, and all the necessary elements that we need to have put in place in order to move forward on that project in the following 6-month increment. Thompson Park, another high priority, priority number 4, renovation of the softball area to include the bleachers, the infield, turf with gopher wire, score booth and storage area, the dugouts. Replace all turf in the park, not just in the softball area, with new irrigation and gopher wire. Interior park safety lighting, restroom renovation and replacement, ADA accessibility to the playgrounds. We have beautiful playgrounds out there, and it'd be nice to be able to allow everybody to get to those. Expand current playground area to include a 2 to 5-year-old play structure. Our most popular play structure is the one at Ryan Park for the toddlers, so it'd be nice to have one in that area near that condensed housing. And to complete the group barbecue area to include a cover. The Civic Auditorium, priority number 5, new house lights. If you've been inside that facility, you know that once we turn on the house lights, you can't really tell that we've turned on the house lights. It's very dim and needs to be upgraded. New refurbished theater seats. There's a picture in the bottom there. You can see some of our seats are in bad condition. Roof replacement, bathroom renovation, repair of the front doors, window replacement, and stage floor renovation. And priority number 6 at the Anderson Recreation Center is to replace the front doors, to renovate the gymnasium into a multi-sport facility, and to replace the lobby floors. At the Anderson Recreation Center, the front doors have been broken for quite a number of years, and we actually have to chain them shut each night because they do not lock. To the gymnasium, right now we put up portable hoops for basketball and portable nets for volleyball, which become a trippable hazard for the athletes participating in those sports. So to allow us to do some renovations to allow both of those sports for the equipment to be put inside the floor so it's not a trippable hazard, as well as the consideration of allowing indoor soccer and other activities in there. And the lobby floor has seen better days and is in dire need of replacement, and part of that replacement would be the consideration of even possibly closing the pit area. That becomes a hazard during rentals as well. Again, these are not all of the projects that we would like to see take place, but in light of the fact that they fall within the boundary areas in the redevelopment boundaries and are conducive with the restrictions of the funding, these are the ones that have been recommended by the Parks and Recreation Commission after the community needs assessment was held. And with that, that's all that I have regarding the projects that in their priority order. So staff is recommending that the successor agency review the list of Parks and Recreation facility improvement needs and priorities, and approve the recommendation of priorities to submit to the successor agency's oversight board as required for approval, or to provide alternate direction. And authorize staff to enter into a contractual agreement between the successor agency and the City of Lompoc that would allow a transfer of the bond funds to the city to carry out the recreation projects according to the purpose for which the bonds were issued and in compliance with existing law, or provide alternate direction. So I am available, as is Linda, if you have any questions.
Councilmember Starbuck?
Well, I understand we have to get this done tonight, so I'm going to start it off with a couple of questions. Dewey's Community Center, what fund is the flagpole that's going to be installed coming out of?
I believe that's out of the current release of bond funds that's to be completed by June of this year.
Separate than this release of bond funds,
Correct.
then?
Yeah,
Correct. It's in the works.
Well, that's what always scares me, the in the works part, because I don't never get that report to compare with this report. So that's why I'm going to ask some silly questions here.
Sure.
Start with silly question number 2. the arch at Ryan Park, I'd made comment during the budget cycle that this was going to be a priority that we were going to take care of. Is that in the works already? Obviously not, because it showed up here then.
To my understanding, and Brad can correct me if I'm wrong, there is money set aside for the arch, but if we can save that general fund money and utilize this money, then that was the thought process.
I'd make that Dirk's #1 priority, because I don't want that arch to fall over on my watch, I'll guarantee. The other question I had here was down on Thompson Park. I understood at one point that city workers were having a fundraiser and were going to build a Dwayne Fuggs pit, a memorial pit. At Parks and Rec Commission, they'd mentioned that they'd like to go ahead and relocate that to Thompson Park because it fell within the redevelopment zone instead of River Park. They could get Youth Corps help to build and install benches and all. Am I on the right path? Am I talking the truth here?
You are speaking the truth. That project was in concept approved by the Parks and Recreation Commission. It was a collaborative effort between those raising funds for the Dwayne Fuggs Memorial and some other resources that were being pulled to make that happen. So that track is still running forward, and this improvement would help support that to make it better and to maximize those opportunities at that facility.
So what you should say to council here is that even though Thompson Park is a priority 4 and complete the group barbecue areas, we have other entities we're going to work with, and we don't want to make ourselves short-funded for that when it comes our turn to put in money.
Well, they are putting together a group barbecue area, and they had some support for some maintenance support to develop it. And some of that support is not working out as well as they had hoped at this point, so they don't have as many resources as they had walking into the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting that evening that they brought it before them. Also, the project does not include a cover, so again, that project will continue to move forward. When we don't know, we want to support that. If these funds can help support that, if that becomes your priority, and I think Linda can add to that.
I just don't want these volunteers to go through all of this and then walk up to the plate and we don't have a ball to throw them.
Oh, no, they would still be able to put that in Thompson Park. We
just wouldn't be able to do our part then.
No, we would be working with them to make that happen.
But if this isn't approved or doesn't get on it, then what happens?
Just recently, the Parks Division was contacted by a organization here in town that was willing to contribute to some of that project cost for the awning. The previous thoughts were some of the funding was going to be done for the awning with an organization utilizing some CDBG funds that is no longer available because it's not an eligible use of funds. So we will there are some other community members that are stepping up to assist with that project there at Thompson Park.
I just felt it was important the rest of council knows that there are people working outside of here that are involved in that.
And there's Kevin McCune brought to my attention earlier this evening, there's also some individuals who would like to pay for a portion of the new playground equipment at Ryan Park. Ryan Park, yes. So there are other people that are looking for opportunities to contribute to. Councilmember Lingle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On priority list, Ryan Memorial Park. Tennis courts you don't have as a priority, but they're in atrocious condition. What's happening with those? I get complaints about those frequently.
The tennis courts it is one area that we were considering. Again, wasn't tennis courts on here originally? I think that when we were talking about Ryan Memorial Park, we looked at, you have the old section of the park where a lot of the festival activities happen, a lot of the events, the dog show happens, and then beyond that, on the other side of the parking lot, you have all the athletic activities, the tennis courts, the baseball field, the softball fields, and the football field. So this was focusing just on the old section. After the cost analysis, is done and a plan is in place, if there's still remaining funds, I know that staff is very interested in looking at going another step further and looking at those tennis courts.
Because from what I understand, at least 2 of the courts, people can't even play on. I mean, there's weeds growing through the pavement. They really, I mean, the striping is gone, the lighting is terrible, so it's almost a hazard for people to be playing out there. So I'd really like to see something be going on there. I mean, maybe instead of possible electrical utility upgrades or parking lot improvements, something with the tennis courts.
Just to add a little clarification on attachment B, where we have all of the input we received at the needs assessment hearing, we do have under Ryan Park tennis courts, and what we did when we made the list going to the A list or the priority list we discussed in the PowerPoint was, where do we think we would be able to, how many items on the long wish list that Ms. Plummer was referencing, how many items do we think the bond money would cover? But, if council wants us to look at one of the things within that broader scope over another, that's certainly something that we could define during a scoping phase.
Okay. And then, let's see, the other on the list, the Henderson Recreation Center, you're going to be redoing the floor, you say. Is it possible, and I have no idea if it's possible, is it possible when we redo the floor, make it that people could roller skate on it and make it into something? I'm serious.
I know you are.
Yeah.
And again, anything is possible. We can look at a multitude of floorings that would be able to withstand roller skates on a regular basis. What the Anderson Recreation Center in this list is listed as priority 6. The amount of funds available for this funding opportunity, with all probability, will not be able to fund anything more than the top 3 priorities.
Okay. Well, just maybe make a note that when you do look at priority 6 and redoing the floor.
I'll write that down right now.
Okay,
for
thank you. I mean, I think some kids would enjoy roller skating in this community. Okay, and then going to the attachment B, and I know this isn't on the priority list, but when I was looking at attachment B, under line 65, I guess, potential purchase of a whole bunch of linens for the Dick Dewey Center.
I don't have that. Here.
I'm not sure why do you have that on there?
I do. Those are in, it's actually not attachment B. Oh, it's a different attachment B. Yes, Exhibit B.
I'm sorry, Exhibit B, yes.
Those are the ones that are already approved, Bob, that the Oversight Board already approved.
Those are already being purchased now and will be in place before June 30th.
Okay, then I get rid of that. The same thing we've already approved then the painting the new lines on the Aquatic Center.
Everything on
there
that
has
sheet
been done.
is what was approved in the last round.
Okay.
And I think the reason that, just so council understands, one of the reasons that this is not familiar to us is this did not come to the council for approval. It went through a staff process, and then it went to the Oversight Board, and it was approved there and never came to the council.
Okay. And one quick question, and I'm realizing it's already been approved, but line 48, the first page of that, an ADA door for the Aquatic Center again. Why wouldn't the Aquatic Center have an ADA door? That's a brand-new building.
We were told by the contractor and the designer of the facility that the type of doors that were installed there are ADA compliant. The type of door we'd like to install are similar to the ones you see at the community center, where a handicapped individual can press the button and it opens up for them. We actually have quite a number of users in the morning that are on scooters, and they actually ride their scooters, but they have to wait for somebody to open the door for them, and then they just cut through our aquatic supervisor's office to get onto the pool deck. They just drive through his office instead of waiting for somebody to open those doors for them.
Okay, so the current doors are ADA approved.
They're ADA compliant as far as the style and design of them, but we're looking at something to be more self-sufficient for those in
push paddle door. Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. This just came in my mind. I don't know if you have the answer. How many community needs assessments were completed and submitted?
We held one community needs assessment at the January meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission, and there's attachment B is the list of everybody that came forward with comments or suggestions. It was on the front page of the Lompoc Record the day before the meeting.
Okay, so yeah, we had 7 responses.
3,
Is that correct?
6, yes.
In your opinion, do you feel like we have enough information? I mean, I guess this is time sensitive, but we have enough information to establish these as our, I mean, I know we checked all the boxes, but do we feel like we've gotten enough input from the community about their priorities?
Well, the Parks and Recreation Commission hear from community members throughout the year. So they hear from the different sports groups, they hear from the different users of the different parks, of the recreation facilities on a regular basis. So for them to be able to vote on their priorities, they acted as if they had plenty of information ahead of them. They didn't just take the information that was presented to them in the January meeting. They took the information that's presented to them throughout the year. The community had an opportunity to come out and express have their voice heard, and some people took advantage of that.
Yeah, and then, I guess it's something that we do as well. I mean, we hear all the time about those kinds of things. I was just curious, 7 seems a little bit low, so maybe we need to work on that for next time around, whether that's an online survey or something that could be easily done by many community members. I would hope that we'd actually have hundreds if we made it easy enough. But I think it's interesting. I like that priority 1 and 2 because I think as far as our council priorities of economic development, these are 2 big drivers of events, and they pull populations from outside the community. And so I understand why those are priority 1 and 2. There are new facilities. We need to maintain that. So I definitely get that. Then beyond that, I think what my priorities are really go to those things that are the most essential, primarily for what I would consider some of the most use in these parks, which is the sports facility portions. So, Dirk, I understand, Councilmember Starbuck, I understand why the arch is sort of a representation. Like it's this physical representation of something failing, right? But I think what I would urge you to do is actually look at, I mean, we decided it's not a historical monument, technically. It doesn't have any of those associations with it, so be innovative. If it's not going to work, if it's going to cost too much to fix, and we can use that money on the field just down the way, because I've had Mr. Sechrist show me how there's holes in the gravel that you could really hurt yourself on. That, to me, is more important than the arch. And as much as the flagpole, I think I mean, it's a great idea. It used to be there and it got taken down. I know that there was some controversy over that. But again, there are, to me, more essential sort of triage things right now that I think we need to focus on. So that would be sort of my thing. Beyond priority 1 and 2, I really think we need to look at triage and figure out how can we make these facilities as safe as they can be as quickly as possible, quite frankly. So I understand the ideology behind it, but I don't know, I mean, can we, instead of saying priority 3 is Ryan Memorial and we're checking all those off before we go to priority 4, can these things sort of happen simultaneously or interchangeably with the most important of, say, priority 3, 4, and 3 and 4, really?
Well, first of all, to kind of take a step back, I wanted to share with you that the reason that the Aquatic Center and the Community Center are priorities 1 and 2 is because those are already existing projects. So they have to be wrapped up and completed, and that's why they're priority 1 and 2. The dehumidification project at the Aquatic Center as well as the development of the Community Center. Priority 3, Ryan Park, again, we're looking at potentially spending up to 20% of the available monies to help develop a plan, to get a cost analysis that Linda had shared that we'll be able to bring back to council. And if at that time you say, I don't want the flagpole or the arch, we're going to go ahead and use general fund money, can we redivert this other monies to another project? We can look at that time. The other thing I wanted to share with you, Councilmember Costa, was that not only did the Parks and Recreation Commission look at everything they hear every meeting, every month, but also staff has a laundry list of deferred maintenance projects and deferred ideas from past budget cycles. So it was a gathering of all that information and a sorting through to see what fit within the puzzle.
Councilmember Costa, if I might add, the point of the prioritization is not to necessarily everything sequentially, but on the other hand, it does recognize there's a finite number of dollars we're talking about, and we want to, if there is ultimately strong opinion on council on what the priorities are, we want to make sure that in the course of doing a number of things concurrently, we don't inadvertently run out of money and end up doing works on some things that are of lesser priorities than others. So clearly for things that are in the higher registers of priority, we'll be able to do them concurrently. There comes some critical point where we hold off on projects while we wait to see how the money runs.
Understood. My argument, again, would be the focus on safety and usability of the facilities. Unless the argument can be made that building the barbecue area will repay for itself in use, which I don't know if it would. Maybe that's information you can provide to me. That to me is sort of stage 2. Right now, the triage is that simultaneous safety first, fill in these potholes, make these things safe, focus on those usabilities of the sports facilities, just because we all know those are used so widely in the community. So that's just my priority. Obviously, physical fitness is a great, wonderful thing, so I'm so excited that all these things are happening at the parks, and I know it's been a lot of time and energy, so I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, and just to follow up, Councilmember Costa, maintenance is not something that these monies can be spent on. So general maintenance is not something we can do. But what we can do, and what's been identified here, is a complete refurbishment, a renovation project.
So it's kind of, here's the way I think you can put it in your head that will work for me. It's improvements, not repairs. There you go. Okay, Councilmember Holmdahl, you're next.
I agree. I've had a chance to meet with staff and go through the recommendations. There's a lot down in Thompson Park and Civic Auditorium, Anderson, we'd love to get done. If we get the first 1 and 2 done, which looks like that'll be go into effect this year, I think that the funding for that comes in July 1st, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Those will be done. And then on the Ryan Park, that information, once it's done, will be coming in by the end of this year and could start the 1st of 15.
Correct.
Right. This gets them done and gets them complete, up and running right. Ryan Park is one of the main parks in town. There's a lot of parks we have in town, but Ryan Park is on Ocean Avenue. And people go through town, and we want to get that arch fixed and the rest of it. But it's also used multiple, from weddings to everything else down there on that section down there. I'd love to get the tennis courts fixed, yes. And if we have some side money or somebody wants to go out and fix it, they can do it. But if we can get those first 3 priorities done between now and get it started on the 1st of 15, we're getting a lot done and moving a lot of things along. The first 2, of course, we got a lot of things coming in. People come from out of town. The Aquatic Center, San Ynez Valley's over here quite a bit, and they love to use the facility and use that park. And also in the Dewey Center, we have some things coming down the road with what you're adding to the Dewey Center. I know this is already done, but you've got to realize that's going to be a major component of people using that facility. And we've had some people discussion of a place to meet and have meetings tied with the Hancock Safety Center that they're going to be coming in with groups. So those 2 have to be done, and get it done and get it done as quick as we can. Ryan Park, if we had extra money to do the others, yes, we'd love to do it. But I think if we get that section of Ryan Park looking good, and the dog show brings a hell of a lot of people to this town. It's one of the largest. In fact, there's more gas and diesel sold that weekend, the dog show, than any time of the year. So the numbers come in here. So that we have to get Ryan Park done.
Okay. I think the first thing I would say is the council made a decision quite some time ago that we wanted items to come to us 2 meetings before they were due. And here we find ourselves with a really, really large item and an awful lot of questions, and the meeting's on Monday. So I'm not prepared to vote for this improvement list or frankly any improvement list. I think the other thing that the staff had brought forward with the concept of moving the decision-making process, if you will, for what we do from the oversight board and the successor agency to this council, and establishing some priorities on how we would do that. I'm more than willing to wait 6 more months while we figure out where we can best spend the money. And here's just some thoughts. I mentioned earlier that the last round of projects we didn't see, they went in, and I learned about it after it was kind of at the last minute, and I said, okay, well, you know, we're good with that, but next time, let's bring these to the council well in advance. And I'm not criticizing the city administrator because he wasn't here, and we haven't gotten that new Ouija board for him yet. I know what's coming, so you'll be on top of it. I think what I would have been more comfortable with here would be the kind of analysis that we would have when we were looking at items for, say, the budget meetings or the CDBG. And frankly, it's exactly what Councilmember Costa said. Well, how much does this cost, and what's the benefit versus how much that costs, and what's the benefit? And, you know, there's a couple things on here. I have a pretty good guess at what they're going to cost, but all the rest of them I have no idea whatsoever. And one of the big concerns for me, I think, is I appreciate the fact that we put an ad in the paper, and I appreciate the fact that 7 people came and testified, but we really didn't go chase down the information. So as an example, with regard to Thompson Park, I met with those folks maybe 9 months ago. I went to their board meeting. I said, what is it that you guys want for the field? And the only 2 things they talked about were getting the field level and having an outfield fence, because they don't have either one of those today. And gopher wire was a nice thing to them, but just getting the grass flat was what they were most worried about. And as opposed to taking all of Thompson Park off the list, maybe we could pick up the one thing that makes their life better. My other concern is that I don't think we're finished with the community center, and I know you guys love it when I type up something long, but I've been thinking about this, and I started working on it Sunday and worked on it yesterday, and I visited the community center again today. I think we have some issues there that we seriously need to consider, and some of them are, you know, pretty basic, like a security camera system to be sure that things aren't happening in the back corridors, and that was something the security folks that I worked with talked about. We've had a theft from the front counter, and there's an easy fix to that, which is to switch the billiard room with the office and put a door through so that someone in the office can watch the front counter. And also, when we're busy, or when we're not busy, someone can do 2 jobs. Issue of sinks in the meeting rooms, probably the most important is storage. And today I went over there and with Teresa, and I looked at where we were storing stuff. So we have one front classroom full of stuff. We have carts and tables in a central classroom. The back hallway had chairs all the way down both sides, and I'm not being critical of the staff over there. They just frankly don't have anywhere to put the stuff. The new barbecue came in, and it was sitting in the back hall. So in total, we have, I don't know, 535 square feet versus of stuff we need to store, and we're going to buy a container that's going to give us 150 square feet, or 2 of them that are going to give us 300 square feet, and we're going to be a little better off, but we're not going to solve the problem. On the other hand, we have a large patio area in the center and the back that's not used for anything and has a set of walls on all the way around it and needs a roof and some doors, and then we would have about 700 square feet of storage, and we would solve that problem. The design that the community put in years ago, we had about 600 square feet of storage in the middle of the facility. We got 80% of a great patio. We got a patio with a high wind wall on the east side, which we asked to have improved, and the building blocks most of it, and then we've got about a 20-foot section from the back of the building to the alley that has a short wind wall. So functionally, the patio is a wind tunnel. We didn't get wind deflectors up on top of the building. City administrator walked through there and said, hey, there's lights missing. You know, they're not all the lighting was put up for the patio area. So there's one at one end and two at the other. And the goal of that patio from the caterers and planners was to have a windproof outdoor venue in Lompoc because there isn't one. You know, they have to go out of the area. There's some work I think we need to do in the kitchen, and I think we need to get the people who use the kitchen to come in there and talk to us about it. And then we don't have a barbecue area. We have a great new barbecue, though. It's really cool, so good news there. But we have a large trash enclosure, and with a little bit of thoughtful work out there and some blocks, we could have a good barbecue area because it's a barbecue town. The Economic Development Committee did a bunch of work on putting together a snack bar, but when it came to consideration, that fell off the list because it wasn't in the environmental document. And the same thing with the party areas, which I misspelled. You know, and I realize that some of these things may not have been in the document, but we're all experienced with the fact that minor changes to environmental document can be made through either a categorical exemption or a negative declaration. So this bond money was put in to build the community center and the aquatic center. I believe our first responsibility is to build those facilities. Then I think our next responsibility is to look out at the other facilities and, to Councilmember Costa's point, to get the most usability that we can out of it. The Ryan Park Arch is probably going to cost $20,000 to fix. I mean, it's going to be 10 grand to pick it up, and then we got to pour a foundation under it. City administrator's concerned that it might fall over. I get that. Maybe that moves up the list because of the safety issue. But some of these other things we need to look at, and we need to take a proactive approach in terms of talking to the associations. You know, we need to go to the festival association and say, what is it that you need most in Ryan Park? Not the laundry list of everything that you need, but what do you need most? With regard to the tennis folks, what they have told me over and over is the surfacing paint for the court. Well, we would have the ability to buy the surfacing paint for the court, make an agreement with the U.S. prison, and use prison labor to apply that material because it's a new construction project. It's not a maintenance project. The soccer people have asked over and over for lighting next to the tennis courts, and one of the reasons that the tennis courts are in really bad shape is because they go in there and kick soccer balls and bend the fence because it's the only place with lights. So there's an opportunity to solve a lot of these things, and I don't have the answers sitting here, but I would like to take a little more time in. This is the only $790,000 we're going to have in the near term to fix these things, and I want to be sure we fix it right. Also, in terms of spending 20% of the money on planning, I think we would be better served to get some approximate costs on these items, bring them back to council, pick out the ones we're most enthusiastic about so we shorten the list a lot, and then send the staff out for more precise numbers and, you know, cost what it costs. So there's my thoughts. They weren't very short. Sorry. Councilmember Starbuck.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring the ugly elephant to the dance right now then.
Okay, come on down.
If this was for pools and community centers, maybe our biggest consideration should be the removal of our old pool.
Yeah,
now we got some that's ready to fall.
We couldn't use it for that. It falls
under recreation.
We couldn't use it for that.
Well,
it's not an improvement.
It would be, because if it falls, it's going to be a big ugly pile.
Yeah, I
That'd be, we could get rid of it at one time. We say, go ahead, tear down the old pool. We'll worry about this. We get more money.
Yeah, I don't.
Actually, the pool demolition was included at one point in this bond funding, but because it was listed under the removal of blight for redevelopment. But perhaps one of...
What'd that mean?
We were looking at the old pool as being in a blighted condition, and in that case, redevelopment could actually demolish the existing pole. But what I wanted to bring up, the mayor had several very good points. One of the things I wanted to bring up is during this 6-month period, the staff could go through and perhaps do more outreach and come back with a more inclusive priority list, but what we need is to at least get the authorization to go forward in, at least in theory, that we're going to go through this period of pre-development where we can establish and make sure that the highest priorities are being met within each of these sections in Ryan Park. So just because it's listed doesn't mean, you know, that we're going to do all those things, or financially there'll be enough money to do all those things. And but during the 6-month period of the ROPS, we need some type of authorization by the City Council to take to the Oversight Board to allow us the funding and the authority to be able to maneuver these priorities and bring them back to you maybe for further consideration.
City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to just clarify a couple of points and maybe some suggestions to help us carry this item on forward and maybe in a more fruitful and productive manner. First of all, just I appreciate you trying to give me the pass on my timing of arrival, but ultimately we're at a point where items that are appearing on the agenda are my responsibility, and to the extent that I haven't brought them forward on a timely basis, that's my doing, and to the exclusion of anyone else. So I accept responsibility for the late hour, if you will, of the timing of this. My apologies for putting you in this situation. Secondly, just wanted to highlight something that staff had shared about that some of this money was going to be earmarked to help us develop more costs, because I understand ultimately there's some cost consideration, not just item consideration, on how we prioritize, especially if we're trying to balance and get the most bang for the buck in whatever application there is. So I just want to point out that as part of the bigger picture. Third, in terms of how we carry these issues around within the community and then ultimately to council, we can certainly agree to disagree on this, but ultimately my view is consider you to be the final authority on how we're going to select the items. And I know there was some discussion about whether or not where we should have gone first or last or whatever, but ultimately my plan, unless I hear differently, is to build up a basis of understanding, but because the ultimate decision-making and priority setting is going to be with this body, we're generally coming here last. But I understand in this situation, the importance of, particularly from this discussion, I'm seeing the importance of maybe having incorporated you more on the front end would have helped, I think, a lot of people involved in the process a lot more. And that's where I'd be saying in helping us decide where we're going from here, whether we're making decisions on prioritizations tonight, or whether you're going to decide that you want to wait and take the time to reprioritize. I would say before we spend a lot more time doing community outreach, I would actually like, if we're going to spend the next cycle deciding this, I would rather facilitate this discussion a little more here with this council first, because I'm hearing at least a couple of what may be competing priorities being expressed. We've got at least one council member who wants to advocate those things that are sports related and health and fitness related, and definitely that has great merit to it. I believe the mayor's indicated things that are going to help generate usage of facilities like the DeWeese Center would be a priority of his, and again, a very noble understanding. I think we need to have, if not agreement, at least some sort of eventual consensus on where we sit with how you foresee, if not prioritization within project specific, at least in concepts of prioritization and what we are trying to accomplish in which order. And I think that'll help us a lot as we seek to get more engagement from the community. Thanks.
Marilyn.
I think that's a good point. Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Marilyn. I think that's a good point as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, other council members, but I do believe priority 1 and 2 we all agree on. I do believe that we need to continue with these facilities. I do believe that that was done in the right way. Priority, if maybe the aquatic center is 2 and Dewey Center is 1, I could actually go for that. But I understand these top 2 priorities. They're the new facilities. We need to complete that. But I do think the mayor brings up a good point that there is some additional work that could be done that increases the use of these facilities or the user friendliness of these facilities. So I think that there was a good strategy because this is time sensitive. I think that we can go with a general framework that then can be brought back to us with additional details for actual funding expenditure approvals. So that's kind of where I'm standing. The sports recreation component are very important to me, Mr. Administrator, but I do agree that it sounds like council is on board for priority 1 and 2 as our top 2 for this evening, at the very least for this evening.
I am that they are our priorities. I'm not convinced that we have the right things on the list yet. And I think that's a decision that we all need to talk about. And I think the city administrator is right. And if you guys on staff are feeling like I'm chewing on you, please don't feel that way, because I know your Ouija boards didn't get calibrated either. So, it's awfully hard to understand what 5 of us are going to think about. And generally, we don't tell you at first. We just know you'll read our minds and come back with exactly the right things. And, it just didn't work quite as well. But you usually do. You're really good mind readers. So I think I'd like to stop now because every council member's gotten some questions in. I'd like to go to public comment. There's got to be somebody that wants to talk to us. Come on down.
Mayor, council members, city staff. My name's Nell Osborne. I am now the new chair of the Economic Development Committee. And
congratulations.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a hard 2 years, thanks. But we're looking forward to it and want to keep our projects moving forward. That being said, we were very happy that you directed the Economic Development Committee and with the pleasure of the Parks and Recs Commission to participate in this assessment. We did have our own discussions in our meetings and amongst our committee members about concerns, and our highest priority was those things that do bring in revenue as a result of the usage, because that then in turn increases our kitties and the ability to improve the other things. So we were with the aquatic center and the senior center being very high priorities. Parts of Ryan Park we were very concerned about because it is utilized by many of the festivals and many of the events, such as the dog show, which does bring in a lot of outside tax dollars being spent. So that is why we agreed with it as being a high priority, as well as Thompson Park. Having seen the improvements that were made at the JM ballpark and its ability to be utilized, it became one of those of the softball tournaments being able to be in town, and Thompson Park is used for those, and without having the softball parks improved, they aren't able to have those sort of tournaments. So again, our priorities came down to what are those things that by improving them bring in the usage fees as well as the improvement for the community members using it. So it was twofold, so that we then increased our ability to fix the parks that are more community based, because we want to do that, because our improved living situation means we're happy with the town we live in and we talk proudly about it. So with that being said, I recommend and the committee recommends that you support going through with this report to the successor oversight board, because we don't want to lose those 6 months of potential funding being approved and moving forward. By waiting 6 months and not presenting anything, or not presenting at least a healthy list of what we look to accomplish, whether that's exactly done or how it ends up being done because of estimates needing to come in and projects needing to be better assessed once we know what budget we have to work with, we don't want to lose 6 months of not presenting anything to the oversight board. So that's our position on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Marvin Solorio. I'm with the Mexican Social Organization, and so I'll let you know that we're interested in replacing the playground, the toddler playground at Ryan Park. So with your funds, with our funds, maybe we can make something really nice over there. So we're looking forward to hearing from the city. We'll be talking with the Parks Department about what we can do, because we do have funds right now to help out. So if you can match what we have, then we can do something pretty good.
Hey, can I convince you to kick in and tear down an old pool?
Isn't there one of those TV shows where they blow stuff up? Maybe we could loan it to them. Okay, anyone else would like to talk to you at this time? Thank you, Marvin. Okay, seeing no one rise, we'll close. Arlen, you're a little slow. Come on down.
I guess what I'd like to do is get all you folks together and take a little walk around these parks. Some of you have done it with me already, but if we went as a mass, we could actually see what needs to be done on a lot of them. And some of them are projects that shouldn't have been put off any length of time, and they're still being put off. Danny's doing an excellent job. When I do my ride around the parks routine in the mornings, if I see something wrong and I just give him a call, chances are he's going to get it taken care of that day if it's something small enough before it grows. But I'd be more than happy to take all you folks on a little ride around to these parks, maybe all of you together. It takes about, maybe 2 hours max, and just let you see some of the things that really need your attention, because some of them could cost us a considerable amount of money in the event that somebody got hurt in them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've taken a lot of tours together. Anyone else for oral communications? Going once? Going twice? Gone.
I just had one other comment to make, is perhaps one of the approaches the City Council can make at this time is to look at directing staff to approve a agreement between the successor agency and the city, and that way the City Council or the successor agency would have more flexibility and more control over any future agreements. So if we at least take that approach going forward, that would assist too with Melinda's next item, to know where to put the line item of the budget monies. That might be an option for the council.
And frankly, I think that's the best approach today, because we will move the ball forward. And I think we really need to have a workshop where we all sit down and look at these things and kind of bring in a little clarity for the staff to set the priorities. And I think it's time for Joe.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure that the council successor agency understands that if we go to the oversight board with just the successor agency and city having agreed to enter into an agreement, that may not be enough for them to feel comfortable in approving that approach without knowing what the items were at least going to be used for. So perhaps if you could at least maybe modify the list to include the mayor's list if there's support to do that, or generally describe the priorities with more less specific items and more general language, so that at least we have an attachment to the agreement that's going to be between the city and the successor agency, that maybe we can get through the oversight board approval.
You know, it's a good thing you said that, because that was the next thing I was going to cover under item 2, which is that the council would establish the priorities for the city in the order of the bond, which is 1, the community center, 2, the aquatic center, 3, recreational facilities in the RDA district, and 4, city recreational facilities adjoining the RDA district.
And maybe with some examples of the type of thing.
Right, I would, to include some examples, but not limited to those things, for example, that kind of language that gives you
Kind
that
of
flexibility.
an overview of what we're looking for.
Right, I think a general overview, I think you could give a few specific examples of actual expenditures that even we can agree upon this evening, that we all know would need to be done. But again, you know, to include perhaps these things, but not limited to those kinds of items.
Well, surely the 2 items that are shown on here for the aquatic center and the 2 items for the DeWeese Center would be good examples, because we have to do those things. So I think there's universal agreement on those from everybody, isn't there?
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, so those would be good examples. And then maybe we could create a little language that basically says to improve the usability of facilities and foster recreation in a cost-effective way with oversight of the council, spending hours and hours and hours figuring it out so that our staff doesn't have to stay up nights with the Ouija board. Now, the question is, do you guys have Teresa, do you have a resolution language that you'd kind of like us to use, or do you want me to?
Actually, I think it's the 3rd recommendation in the staff report that you can use. That instead of direct staff, we could say authorize staff to enter into a contractual agreement between the successor agency and the city of Lompoc. And the remainder of that recommendation would work to allow staff to enter into that contract, and then outline the priorities as you've mentioned them.
Okay. Brad?
I just want to clarify a little bit, maybe expand a little bit on what Joe said. While we understand that the Department of Finance has seen some of these agreements and has acted favorably on them, if we don't get that approval at the oversight board level, we still would need to have the dual track of items that we would want to have on the ROPS, possibly items 1 and item 2. We just don't know if it's a foregone conclusion that they will say okay to the agreement. It makes a lot of sense from many different points of view, but we don't have certainty about what the oversight board would do. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, and I think that's a good point, but I'm confident with our new city administrator as part of that board that some of these issues from the past will be resolved with his pearly words. Okay.
I just want to make a quick comment, then if someone wants to make a motion. I agree with Mr. Wilkie. Some of you have observed the oversight board, and you really cannot predict how they're going to react. And I think if we can be as specific as possible and take out any ambiguity in our report, the better off we're going to be. But if we sort of beat around the bush and say, well, we'd like to do this, but we're not sure, I can see them turning it down. So
I'm okay with that.
Well, I'm glad you are.
I've been turned down before, and it isn't this is our only chance in life. It just, we just kick the ball 6 months down the road, and we're going to do the same thing we're going to do anyway, which is to better quantify our list. Councilmember Holmdahl, and I'll come back to you.
Well, I heard a lot of good things, but I think if we're going to do anything, we need the aquatic center and the DeWeese Center, how we set it up. Now, we can leave verification, some things to change if we wanted to, and the DeWeese Center, the aquatic center is pretty well laid out. What they're going to do there has to be done. We need to get it done right away, and we'll get that, and that can be started sometime in June. The DeWeese Center, there may be some modifications, as the mayor said, and I think that would be that number 3, if we set number 3 on Teresa said, and change that word from direct, but go out with that. But that way, at least, if that's going to the successor board, they're going to go with the aquatic center. That's going to be an easier one for them. If there's some modifications on it, the tables or storage or whatever, that can be done and put together quick enough before July 1, and that's when this stuff has to be put together, if I'm not mistaken.
All right, let me I'll take your shot, and then I'll take a run at a motion and see if I can get everybody's ideas together.
I believe that the council is all amenable to priorities 1 and 2. Perhaps the direction or approach that can be taken is not to set the priorities in numerical value as 3, 4, 5, just list the priorities. And I believe that as long as the priorities are listed, that the oversight board would be enough for the oversight board, because what they're really looking at is that the successor agency lists the project that we plan to spend money on as a priority. So perhaps removing the level of priority and just listing those projects, Ryan Park, Thompson Park, the community center, the aquatic center, perhaps that would be enough for now, and then the staff could come back during this 6-month period with more exact project-specific priorities for the council to make.
And if I could just ask Ms. Wortman, can we add also on there that the pool cover and the replacement of the ceiling tracks and the truncated domes and those tables also be in this next ROPS? I mean, that wouldn't exclude us from adding other items to those centers later, or would it be better to not?
No, I think I got a motion, so let me see if this works for everybody. So authorize the staff to explore the feasibility of entering into a contractual agreement between the successor agency and the city of Lompoc that would allow the transfer of the bond funds to the city to carry out the recreation projects according to the purposes for which the bonds were issued and in compliance with existing law, and establish the following priorities for following priorities in order. 1, the community center, including the 2 items that were on here. I'm sorry, I got to get to the right page. Including, but not limited to, the pool cover, blah, 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 the replacement of the ceiling tracks, blah, blah, blah. Item 2, the aquatic center, improvements, including but not limited to the truncated domes installed along the north side of the building, the 30 additional round tables. Priority 3, recreation facilities within the RDA district, and priority 4, city recreation facilities adjoining the district. That way you get the 4 items that you need right away, you set the priorities, and we still have to decide on the individual projects.
Marilyn, I think you accidentally flipped the titles of the location with the wrong
You're
description.
right, I did. I hereby unflip them.
So just to be
Because I'm
clear,
pretty sure we don't want a pool cover for the DeWeese Center.
And Mr. Mayor, while we're flipping, could we also, instead of saying explore the feasibility, just say authorize staff to enter into?
And we will therefore say authorize staff to enter into. And I need a second.
I think if we authorize staff that flexibility to give under each priority a general description of the kinds of projects, and then like the mayor said, I think that including those some specific examples. So you.
I had the second, so then she.
Yeah, including but not limited to blah, 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 blah.
Right, you don't have to include them all, but a couple key examples that we were very sure that you have council support of, for example, it may or may not, but, like I said, it's not limited to and may include or may not include kind of thing. Just some examples, but give us that flexibility.
I'm looking at Joe. I'm just making sure he's nodding up and down because he has to write this tonight. Or tomorrow if you're still here.
You don't have to hurry home.
Okay. Madam Clerk, are you good on the motion more or less?
We'll work together and have it clear.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this? Seeing none, could we vote, please? That passes 5-0. Thank you. And we will take a 7-minute break. Okay, come back to order. Everybody find your seat. If you can't find your seat, find somebody else's seat, as long as they left it warm for you. And now we will move to item number 8. Review and acceptance of the Lompoc Recognized Obligation Payment Schedule, alias the ROPS. And Melinda, fun stuff.
Thank you, successor agency members. I appreciate you being very excited about finding out about all the things that the Department of Finance has us jump through to get this ROPS going. One thing you should know about the ROPS, the whole purpose of the ROPS, prior to me getting into this, is to dissolve the redevelopment agency. So they had no planning on how to deal with things besides the tax increment. The important thing to know is that we had to jump through a lot of hurdles before we got to utilize the bond proceeds. We had to do a due diligence review, agreed upon procedures where the auditors went through our information, the county had to go through our information, the state controller office had to go through our information before we even got to the chance to come to you. And this is probably why you don't get to see the ROPS every time we go through this, because most of this you have no control over. The ROPS happened, of course, when they dissolved the RDA with SB X 126, and it requires an annual report. Problems with semi-annual report. Problems with semi-annual reports that we do budgets on an annual report. And this whole schedule is based so the Department of Finance can make sure they get as much money as possible, and the money goes to the various agencies like the schools and the counties. This whole sheet is based on call it a RAD app, which is a redevelopment agency dissolution web application. You always have to have names for things, so RAD app is appropriate. It's made of several tabs. It's on an Excel spreadsheet. It's not always easy to get a readable copy when it's printed out to successor agencies or oversight boards. But in doing this application, they try to break it down into various pages. Of course, the first page is a summary of what happens in page 2, 3, and 4, and page 5 is just a place for notes. But page 2 consists of a summary. The summary that you see on page 2 has where the enforceable obligations are listed for bond proceeds, the reserve balance, other funding obligations. What you should know about is after you, so you summarize page 1 is, of course, the summary. Page 2 is a report of cash balances because they want to make sure that they catch on to any amounts that are outstanding at the end of the year. Page 3 is our 1415A ROPS, which we go through line details. And page 4 is a summarization of what happened in the 1314A ROPS. These all combine to this first page that you see in front of you. What we're trying to get to is on page 1, line A, is telling you exactly how much money that we're trying to get from the property tax. And that's their main focus, as I said. So they're looking at what we need, like page 1, line B refers to page 3, and it details all in the very front, very top line, the amounts that are required. So column 3, K, shows where we got the number for the bond proceeds, what we need to, for that year. Again, as if you look at page 3, in reflection to page 1, you see columns K, L, N, and O reflect all the redevelopment property tax increment monies that we're from the trust funds that we're trying to ask for. The information that you're dealing with tonight with the bond proceeds, again, what we're trying to do here tonight is get the bond proceeds onto the ROPS. So if you're looking at page 3, and I won't go directly off of the report, but things that are common that come up all the time are the items 1 through 13, which is the recognized obligation payment schedule, which include the bonds that we get. We have to get those from tax increment, the 2004 bond, the 2010 bond, our energy efficiency lease payment that we make, things like trustee fees, arbitrage rebate services, and then we have personnel costs. That is $125,000 that were allocated per every 6-month period. The Department of Finance has tried to, they've changed this form every 6 months, and so at one time they had every single line item listed. This last time they updated again, and now they're subtracted out the lines that we've accomplished, but they've left the line numbers, so you see us go from line 13 to line 29. It jumps from 35, 36 to 40. These items are, again, reflected. They're items that can be paid from other sources or from the property taxes. And the other sources, we have items like the bond proceeds, the reserve balances, and other funds. So we don't have any other funds. But on our reserve balances, it's important to note that we have money set aside for our Laurel Crossing, which is a low and moderate income housing fund. And those amounts haven't been paid off yet. And then we have some other obligations that have been carried over from our due diligence / agreed upon procedural report that was done at the very beginning for obligations for employee benefits. So when you're looking at this, in reality, the important thing to note is that the items that have to do with bond proceeds are the items that are listed 46 through 56, or through, in the next page it would be 57 through 66. These are all items that were added to the last ROPS, which is 1314B. The item tonight we're looking at is actually line item 67. And what we're wanting to put onto there and get your approval for is to put the remaining bond balance in there for the amount of $748,244. And that's as of the last updated information we have. So what we'd really like to see from you tonight is for you to approve the fact that we put all the bond proceeds on this one line item, with the stipulation that we get into a contract between the successor agency and the city council. And the reason why we want it all on one line item is that in our previous ROPS, we were trying to list all the items that we thought we could get. So we got a quote for items through the recreation. They did a quote to find out what the items were. And it's catch-22, because if you have to put the vendor and the amount, and you can't go over the amount. So if you get a quote from a vendor 6 months ago and you put it on the ROPS, and the amount is, the vendor's no longer interested, doesn't put out a bid, the amount's too much, it means that the line item on the ROPS is incorrect. And we have problems with the Department of Finance to try to complete this. Because, again, the ROPS was made to do away with the RDA. It was made to say, we know exactly where you're going to spend your money or how much we have to pay out. But on things that we have to put a bid on, we don't really know until we actually go out to bid, but we can't go out to bid until we get okay through the Oversight Board and the Department of Finance. And so there's a little frustration there. And so the whole purpose tonight is to get that approval from the successor agency to put the whole amount in there. Now, 3 weeks ago, we didn't know that we could get into an MOU agreement between the successor and the city that we've been working with June from Joe's office, and she's found a documentation that has allowed us to go into an agreement. Now we're still in a draft stage of it, and we don't have all the details, but doing what you did tonight will give us enough information to put it on to the schedule and get it approved and allow the city to go forward and get that agreement put in place and spend the money. So what we're requesting tonight is for you to approve the whole amount in one line item and go forward.
Great. And congratulations on having probably the worst item on earth to present.
Sorry.
And you did a great job.
You know, what's scary is I understood it.
Yeah. Yeah. Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Marilyn. I appreciate your report. My only question is, I understand the reasoning why you put it in a single line item, but in your opinion, and you may have mentioned this, I'm sorry if I missed this, how likely is the Oversight Board to approve it as a single line item versus having the additional information?
That's why you went to the last agenda item that you had. It was so important that you put in the scope of what the MOU would cover and your intentions. Now, the Oversight Board can just say that they are not going to accept it. And if they don't accept it, then I would ask that maybe we could put in $150,000 to at least get those things done we know on priority list 1 and 2, and maybe get some pre-engineering or consulting going to further our list of what we want to have happen. But the Oversight Board really was intent on making sure that the successor agency was on board how the money was spent. So.
That's great. And so when this item is presented to them on the 24th, this will come hand in hand with that report from our last agenda item?
Yes. Okay.
And I would just say, if they're feeling questionable about it, don't roll over. Fight them on it. Fight them on it. Don't say 150 is okay. Say, no, the full 748 still won't be enough for everything we need to do. This is some examples. Yeah.
Yes.
I give you that authority.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions at this time? So I'd like to open this up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to us on this subject? Going once, going twice, gone. Okay, so we're going to come back, and who wants to take a run at a motion? Bob, you haven't done any work tonight. You want to jump into this one? Dirk, you got it? All right.
I move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Melinda, there's a lot of confidence in you tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, is there any discussion on this? City
You
administrator?
want me to read the?
No, definitely not. We trust. City attorneys.
Yeah, you and Brad together, please.
You got it. He wrote it down. Yeah, he wrote it down. Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing no lights, could we vote, please? That passes 5-0, and I want to thank you and Brad for staying late because I know you have a long drive tonight. I have a training class tomorrow morning in, is that Albuquerque? No, Palm Springs. Okay. Now we come to item 9, a memorandum of understanding transferring management of the school crossing guard program from the city of Lompoc to the Lompoc Unified School District along with the money. Chief?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, citizens, and those that are still here. Back in 2013, as we were preparing for the 13-15 budget, we were asked to look at our budgets and find ways that we could be more efficient with our resources that we have. One of those items that we identified had to do with our crossing guard program. Traditionally, for the last 30 years or thereabouts, the crossing guard program has been funded by the city. The police department has managed that program and trying to keep crossing guards on staff working at the various locations around the different schools in the city. It's been a challenge for us. We periodically have a worker who will either call in sick or will quit, and we'll end up having to staff it with a community service officer. There's been times we've had to do it with police officers over the years, and it's just not efficient. So we have been talking in the past year and a half with the school district, talking about this concept of being able to move the crossing guard responsibilities over to the school district staff, where they could hire and be able to manage the school locations more efficiently than we could. We would provide them the equipment, the signage that we have, the vests that we've acquired over the last few years, jackets and so on that are marked appropriately. So the school district would be able to take that equipment. We'd transfer the personnel that are currently employed by the city. They would become employees of the school district and then move forward. The caveat of that is that the school district didn't have the $38,000 that we have in our budget, that we've had in our budget for several years. And so with, again, discussion with the school district and with our staff, we've been able to come up with a way where the school district, again, would staff and pay these employees. We would pay the school district on a monthly basis as they would bill us for it, up to the maximum that we would go is $38,852. Now, according to Mr. Wilkie, we have never come to the point where we have spent down that entire $38,000 over all the years. So a couple of things that are on the horizon, the increase in our minimum wage that was passed after the 13-15 budget was passed. And so that's a dollar raise coming up in July of 14. And then we have another one in January of 16, where there's another $1 an hour raise. With those raises, with the first raise, we still will be able to have enough money in that account, the $38,852, that we would be able to absorb that without going over our budget. Again, if the school district continues to staff these positions appropriately, to their satisfaction, and not going over the number of employees, 7, that we've had for the last several years, we think that we can make it work, and it will be more efficient. It'll take the burden off of the police department to have to manage this program, and the school district will have a more hands-on responsibility for that. So what we are asking is that the city council approve an MOU between the City of Lompoc and the Lompoc Unified School District, which transfers the management of the current school crossing guard program from the Lompoc Police Department to the district, commencing in the 14-15 school year, and also provide city will continue to fund the program in the amount not to exceed the city's current budget for the amount of $38,852 per year, or give us other direction.
Councilmember Costa?
Thank you, Mary Lynn. My only question, Chief, is about, I didn't take time to look through the MOU, my apologies, about reporting. Do they have any reporting requirements? I know that there was some room for program adjustments, and the idea is that if there was additional monies out of that 38,000 and change, 38,852, that they wouldn't be required to return the money if it wasn't expended. And I think on a year to year, I think that the amount of work it would take to do that probably isn't worth that. But I think over a long term, I don't know if it's an annual or biennial view, are they going to be required to report anything about those funds?
Well, the agreement is that it would be a monthly process. So they will give us a monthly amount, and with Brad Wilkie's office, they'll account for that, and we'll make a payment out of that $38,000 account. So through the 10-month school year, and then at the end of the 14-15 year, we will reanalyze, and if this is something that we want to move forward with in the future, we'll do that.
On that monthly basis, though, what are they required to submit to the city for reimbursement? Yeah.
The hourly, the hours per employee, what the individual employee hours and the cumulative hours, and then what the cost is. So there's no extra fees that we're budgeting in, no administrative fees to the school district. This is strictly paying for their hourly rate.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lingle. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, that isn't quite my understanding when I was reading this, because when I was reading it, I read someplace in there that our Lompoc Police Department never spends the entire amount.
Right.
But we are going to, I thought the staff report said that we'll let the school district keep the remainder even if they don't spend it.
No, the amount, again, paying it on a monthly basis, up to that $38,852. So if by June of this next year that we've spent, say, $28,000, typically it's been around the $25,000 to $28,000 that we've been spending each year. So again, we're not giving them the $38,000 up front. We're giving them on a monthly basis through that period. So if we haven't spent down the full 38, we'll still be holding that additional money back.
Okay.
Again, this is there's going to be some massaging to this in this first year, and as we, I anticipate that the 15, 16, 16, 17 budget will probably require us to come back and make some adjustments to the MOU, but we needed to move forward with this as soon as we could to be ready for the 14-15 budget.
Okay, and we're going to continue to do the live scan fingerprinting.
That's right.
For them. Are we that expensive? Are we taking that out of the 38? Because right now that's coming out of the 38,000.
It comes out of $38,000, but the costs are minimal for us because we run our own live scan. So our cost to the Department of Justice is $16 per person. So it's really minimal cost for us.
Okay.
And we're probably talking 7 employees, 10 at the very most per,
And then La Purisma Elementary School. That's not really part of Lompoc University School District.
No, it's not. And that's one, the school district and La Purisma have collaborated over that, and the police department have collaborated together on that, providing that crossing guard for a lot of years. We aren't sure how that's going to move forward. As far as I would like to see it continue, but again, shifting this over to the school district, they will have a little more of a say in how they want to deploy their crossing guards.
Because that is one of the 7.
Right now, it is one of the 7, yes.
They don't include La Purisma. It'd be a shame because, there's a lot of little kids crossing streets over there.
Right.
So I'm hoping they will. Okay.
And part of that over there at La Purisma, those kids that are using that crossing area a lot of those kids aren't La Purisma students, but they're students from the LVMS. So it benefits both.
Yeah. So I'd like to, I know the MOU is already written, but I'd like to see maybe some stronger language to really ask them to, or tell them they need to include La Purisma. That's an important 7th crossing guard there, is my concern.
We can certainly speak to their staff about it, but it was in the discussions it was not spoken that we would mandate particular locations. Some of this is we've adjusted our processes over the years where we've seen intersections that we were providing a crossing guard for, and then realizing that there was a better location that we could get more usage out of the crossing guard, more protection for the kids, so.
And then just the last thing, it's not a big item, but we're giving them the equipment, the vests, the signs and everything.
Right.
Let's say in 6 months, 2 years, they say it's not working. Are we getting that equipment back?
Then we'll take the program back. If after we test this out for the 14-15 year and we don't think that it's a good fit, then we'll bring it back over to the police department and we'll take it over again.
With the equipment?
With the equipment, right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other lights, I'll open this up for public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak to us on this item? Going once, going twice, nobody gone. Okay. Any questions for the chief? If not, I would accept a motion. Whose turn is it? Bob's, okay.
I move staff recommendations.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, could we vote, please? And that passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, the most exciting part of the evening. Adoption of the 2013 California Fire Code. Got enough build up for you, Chief?
Sorry. Yeah. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, those of you left in the audience, those of you at home. First of all, I'd like to confirm that you received your attachment to my staff report.
She didn't do it again.
Well, you know, I couldn't let a meeting go without a little humor. I was actually joking with somebody earlier. I think this one surpassed the number of pages of my fireworks ordinance.
You know, you're graded by the pound, so I'm sure the city administrator is paying close attention to this.
Thank you for enduring my humor. Before you is introduction of ordinance 1601, open paren, 14 close paren, for the adoption of the 2013 California Fire Code. Before I dig deep into what is a riveting subject, I would like to call your attention to a couple of corrections. The first, apparently my save button wasn't working, and I apologize for that. The first correction, I was on page 4 of 23 of the ordinance. And if you'll drop down just below D, that should say 105.7.17. And then the next one is on page 9 of 23. And that would be the deletion of Q and the subset directly beneath it.
So 507.1 map directories?
Right. We normally pick those up during design review. Those are the only two items that I would ask be modified as we move forward with the adoption of the ordinance. You've seen some of this background before. We go through this every 3 years. We're a little later than normal this year simply because of workload and staffing. However, on January the 1st of 2014, this code went into place. And by default, we are in this code. We immediately ended up with some conflicts with our existing code and the new state code. And interesting, as I was going through the state adopted code, there were actually sections in here that said insert here. So we're inserting there in some of those areas, such as penalties, etc. So it's published every 3 years. We're in it by default. We have the authority to modify the standard provisions to be more restrictive through local amendments. And then there's a standard terminology we use that, based on topography, climate, et cetera. So what we're proposing is to realign the California 213 code with the city code with some clarification and some rewrites. Why do we have so many amendments is possibly a question that's in the back of your mind. Prior to the state and many jurisdictions transitioning from the good old uniform fire and uniform building codes into the international code, we really had gotten those codes to a point where there was very little amendment needed. Once we transitioned to the international code, we lost many of our western sections. So as we work through the international code, we start slowly putting some of those sections back in place. I'd be more than happy to go through every single one of those sections. I will tell you that I had the opportunity to meet with one of our local civil engineers and one of our local architects and go over the document, not extensively, but I heard some of their concerns. I had attempted to clarify many of the sections. A couple of things they pointed out to me weren't that clear. So we got back and did some minor editing. We are required to do a public hearing and notice, and that's what we're recommending you setting for March. Once these are adopted, it's our plan, working with the building department, to put on a workshop for our developers, our contractors, and our business owners jointly, so that we can walk them through the changes and answer any questions they may have. Obviously, the intent is that when they bring forward projects, it will streamline the process. The fiscal impact is offset by the fees that are collected. As you recall, when you authorized the deputy fire marshal position, we actually updated a fair number of fees. Most of them went down. A couple of them were somewhat controversial but misunderstood. So some of the sections within these amendments actually reinforce our position with fees. It memorializes some of the actions you've already taken by resolution. It clarifies our ability to recover fees during hazardous materials events, etc. And it strengthens and clarifies the authority of the fire department and the Fire Prevention Bureau. And that's most of the administrative side. Except I'd be more than happy to go through this page by page if you wish. I'd like to defer to your desire. Oh.
Chief, I want to tell you that I read this page by page, and this was even more exciting than the ROPS. It was great. Anybody else have a question about this? Stand by. Now we'll open public comment. Does anyone want to talk to us about this? Seeing no one rise, we'll close public comment and come back. Are there any amendments other than the two that the chief recommended that anyone wants to talk about? Seeing no lights lit, I need someone to make a motion that's the staff recommendation plus the amendments that the chief put in.
That's my motion, Mr. Mayor.
And I'll second.
You read the whole thing,
Yeah, you do, and I'll have, no, he can't shoot you, he's not here. Yeah, there you go.
He left. He told me he was, never mind.
Yeah, he left. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, could we vote, please? To everyone's total surprise, that passes 5-0.
I can't wait till March, Chief.
Yeah, me either.
And now, for something even more exciting, we'll have the introduction of Ordinance 1614, amending subsection D2 of Section 15.08020 of the Lompoc Municipal Code regarding fire sprinklers in existing non-residential buildings. Sarah?
Good evening, everyone. I'll keep this brief. It is brief. The item that we were talking about brings clarification that was requested when we adopted the building code back in the December meeting. So staff recommends that council introduce the ordinance number 1614.
And the folks in the community had some questions about it, thought that this was a good resolution to the problem.
Good.
So are there any questions on this item? Boy, you did a really good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll open this for public comment. Anybody want to talk about this? Larry? No. Okay, we'll close public comment and we'll come back to the council. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, it's Ashley's turn to make a motion.
I move staff's recommendations.
I'll second that.
We're going to have to give our pay back for tonight because we're having entirely too much fun. Okay, and is there any further discussion? Seeing no lights, could we vote, please? And that passes 5-0. Which brings us to lucky item number 12.
You've been waiting for 12 all night, haven't you?
Well, I hate to break it to you, but there's nobody here from the electric utility to do item number 12. They're running. They didn't think we could do that fast. Sarah, you were too quick for them.
Well, either I can do the presentation or some impressions for you, either way.
Can you do
2 seconds away?
The impression of being connected to 220 volts?
Thank you.
Greenhouse gas guy?
We were too fast.
But all the other ones were so long, I was just waiting patiently. All right, cool. Yeah, we're good. Okay. Good evening, council members, mayor, Mr. City Administrator. My name is Marty Hostler. I'm the electric manager for the city of Lompoc. And tonight I'm here with good news. I'm here to talk about how I propose that we use our greenhouse gas allowances to fund some energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. All right, let's go to slide 2, please. Okay, so give you a quick little background here. Assembly Bill 32, which is also known as the California Global Warming Solutions Act, was signed by Governor Schwarzenegger in 2006. The goals of that legislation was to reduce greenhouse gases back to 1990 levels by 2020. In 2012, the California Air Resources Board, also known as CARB, adopted cap and trade regulations. The first cap and trade auction was held in November 2012, and annually they have 4 quarterly auctions, and we participate in those auctions by either buying or selling allowances. Last year we sold all 47,500 allowances that we had, which were allocated to us by CARB for approximately $540,000. Up to year 2020, we have, or we will be allocated about 326 allowances, and I estimate those values to be about $4.3 million. And then CARB will annually allocate those allowances in increments between 45 and 47,000 allowances per year. Next, please. Okay, in this table you have in the staff report, it basically outlines how many allowances we will be allocated per year, what our estimated price per allowance will be, and what the projected auction revenue will be. Now, if you want me to dig in deeper this, you can ask me questions on this letter, how we determine prices and allowances, but I'll save everyone time unless you have questions. Okay, so how do I propose that we use these funds? The first one is currently we have a program that the electric division is doing. We're converting our 4 kV lines to 12 kV lines. The purpose of this is it's numerous. One of them is to reduce our system losses from about 7,800 megawatt hours per year, or about 5.5% of our system load, to about 7,250, which would be about 5% of our system load. By doing this, we'll save about $40,000 per year in energy costs per year. And that's about 555 megawatt hours. The other benefits of doing this project are we'll be able to use lighter, smaller overhead wire, and the reason why we can do that is because there's less current traveling through the wire, so we don't have to worry about as much about losses and current ampacity of the circuits. The other benefits are we are able to use lighter and cheaper polymer insulators instead of using the old heavier type porcelain insulators. And we're also able to standardize our design, our construction, and materials, so there'll be less maintenance overall on our system. Another benefit is we'll have less spare parts to warehouse in the future, because all of our feeders will be 12 kV feeders instead of 12 kV and 4 kV. Okay, now I wanted to note that that project is already funded in the current budget. And it's funded at $100,000 per year. It's currently funded through rates, though, and I'm proposing, since it is an energy efficiency project, that we designate it to be funded in the future using the greenhouse gas allowance revenues. Another project that is currently funded is our streetlight replacement project, and we're converting high-pressure sodium to LED lights. You can see the picture on the left. That's a picture of how the high-pressure sodium lights look at night, and the picture on the right, how newer LED lights look at night. If you've noticed going down Central Avenue now, we've completed all of Central Avenue, removing all the high-pressure sodium lights, and we've installed LED lights. Now, we'll caveat that by saying that the electric department has done everything that we can do, but we don't own all the intersection lights. So the intersection lights are still high-pressure sodium, and those are not owned by us, so we don't touch those. And anything on Caltrans's right-of-way on H Street and on Ocean is under Caltrans's jurisdiction. So we have to wait for them to do their work first. And they actually do already have projects planned in Lompoc. I'm not sure on the date yet because they haven't told us about that. But they are using the same LED lights that we're using for our projects. So I've actually copied everything that we're using. We're using Caltrans specs on all of our lights that we're install all our new LED lights. So they do meet the requirements. We're just waiting for them to do their lights first for Ocean and for H Street. Now the benefits of doing this project are that they use about 50% less energy than high-pressure sodium lights. Currently, our lights in our city use about 3,000 megawatt hours per year. So roughly, it'll be about 1,400 megawatt hours of energy will be used once we complete the whole project. Now, we've already replaced about 400 LED lights. We've put in some induction lights. That was part of our initial pilot program. About 3 years ago, we started trying out induction lights because they proved to be savings in cost. They were similar efficiency and lifetime of the LEDs. However, we started having some problems with them, and problems were on some of the way the housing's mounted. We were getting in the wind, a lot of the filaments and parts were rattling loose, and we were getting about a 10% rejection rate. So I've discontinued putting in induction lighting because of basically they're not as reliable as LED lights. So you will see some of those. Those are particularly induction lights are on V Street. We still have those. We have some in stock. We'll keep using those, but we're not buying any more. We'll use the ones that we have in stock, and Then when we run out of those, we'll be using LEDs. The ones that were rejected, we've already sent back to the manufacturer because those are under warranty. We have a 10-year warranty on those. So we're still getting value from that. We're getting those replaced as we find them to be faulty. Now, the other lights that we have installed, some of the other funding that we've used in the past is, we had a $100,000 grant from the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act that we used back in 2011, and with that money we funded the project up in the Crestview area. We did all Crestview with new LED lamps, and we came south of Ocean all the way to A Street with LED lights. That's as much money as we had to fund using those funds. Other projects that Public Works funded was the Hancock bike path. There's about 60 LED lights there. Electric now maintains and operates those lights also. And so some of the other monies that we've used to replace the 400 LEDs and induction lights that we have to date are past funding, which was at about the current level, which is $50,000 per year. So by going to LEDs, the benefits here, like I said, it's already been approved. What I'm asking here is that we double the funding, and by using the greenhouse gas allowance funds instead of having them funded through rates, because they are more energy efficient. They last 3 to 4 times longer than high pressure sodium lights, which lowers our annual labor, material, and equipment amortization costs. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay. Another project that I'd like to use some of the greenhouse gas funds are for our Middletown geothermal project. You see here, this is a picture of our geothermal plant that we have capacity rights to in Middletown, California. It's operated by the Northern California Power Agency. We're one of several cities that are involved in this project. Other cities include Healdsburg, Ukiah, Silicon Valley Power, Lodi, and also Turlock Irrigation District. City owns about 4.1 megawatts of the plant's capacity. Last year, this plant delivered about 30,000 megawatt hours, or 23% of Lompoc's energy needs. The steam fields on this project and the injection wells that supply water to the plant decay every year. Reason for that is earth shifts, some of the lava flows and heat in the area. Everything's moving around, water tables lower, all kinds of things are going on there in the earth. So almost annually, new wells need to be drilled or old ones need to be re-drilled because they get all kinds of grit and crud that gets inside the wells. So they need to be cleaned up, or some of them, if they're not being productive anymore, then they need to be, we need to drill a new one somewhere else. Also, there's piping modifications that are needed annually because you have to change piping between different steam fields, and also that would be for the steam piping, and then you have the actual water piping for the injections need to be changed periodically as well. In 2013, the city spent about $87,000 on different types of modifications. That was our share of the plant capacity, and this year we plan on spending about $81,000. Previous years, particularly I think it was 2012, we had more funding, but that was because we were replacing the turbines and the generators there to buy newer, more efficient generators and turbines, because those turbines were about 25 years old. And so we got new ones in, and we realized some capacity increases because there were newer, efficient turbines and generators. Okay, next. Another project that I'm proposing for the future is the Calpine Power Purchase Agreement that we are currently working on with NCPA, the City of Lodi, Roseville, and Silicon Valley Power. We would purchase between 1 to 2 megawatts of capacity over a 10-year period from Calpine. The cost would be about $85 per megawatt hour. And we purchase between 8,000 to 16,000 megawatt hours per year, or that equates to about 6 to 12% of our annual use in the city. This would bring our renewable energy supply up from, we're up to 29% if we go with the 8,000 megawatts, and if we purchased 16,000 megawatts, it would be 35%. The total annual cost of this is going to be between $680,000 and $1.36 million. Purchase this. So obviously, with the monies that we're going to be getting from the greenhouse gas revenue, we can't fund this entirely from the greenhouse gas allowance funds, but a portion of it surely could be supplied. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention on this, we are working on some other options on purchasing renewable energy credits and other power purchase agreements that we don't have any term sheets or anything yet for, so I'm not bringing those to you at this time. And then one last thing about this I want to mention is by approving the resolution today, I'm certainly not asking you to approve the power purchase agreement because it hasn't been drafted yet. It's still being negotiated, so I would still have to come back here in the future to get the power purchase agreement authorized by the council. Next. Okay. Okay, this is a summary table of all the revenues and expenses. You have that in your package. I don't know if you have any questions on it, but basically what it shows, I've arranged this so we have a zero value at the end of 2020. And one of the things I also wanted to mention is currently the California Air Resources Board has only authorized issuing the greenhouse gas allowances to us through 2020. It's planned that the project will continue after that, but they haven't set any, made any commitments on what the allocations will be to each city. Okay. And the other things I just want to point out is obviously we're not going to be able to fund everything that I've proposed here, but what it does is provides us different options on what we want to fund and flexibility on what we want to do. We're also, as I mentioned earlier, investigating other PPAs and renewable energy certificate purchase options, which I'll bring to you later as they evolve. Any questions?
Do we have to sell them now?
Pardon me?
Do we have to sell our credits? Can we hold them?
We are required to consign all of our allowances that are issued in each calendar year to auctions in that calendar year. So for instance, everything that we had allocated for 2014, we have to consign them to the auctions in 2014. Now, it doesn't say what particular auction we have to go to. We could do them in any quarterly auction, or we can use the plan that the council approved about a year ago when I was here, and that was that we take 25% of our allowances and we allocated them 25% into each auction. So it sums up to be 100% at the end of the year.
Councilmember Humble?
Yeah, on the Hancock Bike Trail, when did you change the LED lights, or did you put them in?
Oh, those were installed from the onset. We never replaced those. I was just showing, for example, that we are now, the electric division's now responsible for maintaining those lights, even though we didn't install them. They're in our inventory now, and but they were funded through a public works project.
Well, the reason I asked that, for some reason, they stand out more now, and the lighting of an LED is much brighter, as you showed through the picture. I don't know, I just happened to think about it when you brought it up, because as you come in, you can really see them at night.
No, we haven't changed any of them.
Okay. The other thing I had is that, are we lowering any of the rates? Do we have to use all that money to do other things? Can we lower the rates that we're charging for electricity?
You could use it to, well, you'd have to, I mean, you could certainly lower the rates, but it would have to benefit all customers, and so it's hard tell which customer class you're going to lower the rates for, by what percentage.
Okay.
So, yeah.
My first question is for the city attorney. Is there, in your opinion, and I have asked him in advance, but I just want everybody else to hear the same answer, is there any chance that we could be required to pay the state back for these, in your opinion? The RDA, the RDA is still fresh in my, yeah, the RDA is still fresh in my mind.
No, there's not a chance that we'd have to pay these back.
And you're personally guaranteeing that note?
I'd never be able to cover that amount of money, so sure.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Marty, you had mentioned several of the advantages going with the new LED lights, lighter wires, less storage, lights have to be replaced at a less frequent schedule, a lot of benefits to the city.
Yep.
But when I'm reading the report, several places in it says that this money must be used to benefit the ratepayer.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the benefit to the ratepayer? I mean, Councilmember Humdall asked, but...
Benefit to, okay, good question. Benefits to the ratepayer is that the electric division pays for all the maintenance and all of the energy for all the streetlights in the entire city, and that by doing this, it benefits the ratepayer because now that this money will be coming from the greenhouse gas allowances, so it won't be coming from rates anymore. So any monies that are being allocated for this lighting project are all going to come from the greenhouse gas allowances. They won't be coming from rates anymore. And that will lower the electric division's cost.
Well, indirectly, then the ratepayer is getting a reduction.
They are getting a reduction.
But it's not pretty, yeah.
What I think we're doing is we're possibly deferring rate increases.
Yes, that's kind of what I mentioned in the fiscal impact is we're potentially deferring any rate increases because we do have other items that are currently affecting us that could possibly in the future cause a rate increase. For instance, the transmission access charges are increasing, which is impacts how much all of our power is imported into Lompoc. So we have to pay an access charge for each megawatt hour that comes into Lompoc. So in the future, we probably will have to increase rates for that charge. The other things are, like right now, for instance, we got a drought going on. Even though it rained pretty hard about a week ago, we still got a drought, and a lot of dams are holding their water back or don't have enough to generate energy. A lot of that cheap hydropower isn't cheap anymore. They're holding it back because it has a high value for storage, and they're only running it at minimum fish flow requirements now because they need that water for the future to meet their to continue meeting their fish flow requirements.
Yeah,
hopefully that answers your question.
It does, yes.
Okay.
One more question then.
Okay.
The Calpine project.
Yes.
About $85 a kilowatt.
Yep.
Megawatt, yeah.
Oh, megawatt hour, yes.
Megawatt hour. Rather on the high side.
It's a little on the high side. It's not abnormally high. I don't know if you remember, but about 3 years ago, we had entertained a project working with Western Geothermal and Ram Power for $103 a megawatt hour. So this is quite a substantial decrease. It's almost a $20 per megawatt hour decrease in cost. The other thing that you have to remember is the city of Lompoc is small. We are teaming up with other cities, but this is the total allocation for this purchase agreement is going to be about 10 megawatts, and we're not buying in large amounts, so we're not being able to realize a bulk purchase type discount, I guess, for lack of better words.
Okay.
So we are going to pay a little bit higher cost, but it's not a bad cost. If you consider our average melted cost of energy is about $75 a megawatt hour, it's only about $10 above, and there's about a $30 premium for renewable energy. So if you put that $30 premium on top of energy that we're buying on the open market now, which for heavy load periods is averaging about $55, that's right around the $85 mark right there.
Yeah, I was going to point that out, that, you know, this is helping us reach those required goals.
Right.
And so it's just one of those things we have to do regardless. We have to find a project. And this one, if this one's feasible and cost effective, it definitely makes sense. I have a question. I know obviously every municipality is different, but what are you seeing out there? What are people using these funds for? Is there a trend at all?
There is a trend. Most people are, there's other cities like Alameda is using them for energy efficiency projects as well, to fund street lighting projects. Other entities there's some entities that are using it, I'll say not quite the way it should be used, which I'm not suggesting we use, which is they're using them to pay for greenhouse gas allowances that they're buying on the market, which is kind of not clear on the legislation that you're allowed to do, because we have to buy these allowances too, because we have fossil fuel generation interests as well, like for our Lodi Energy Center, our Alameda combustion turbines, our Lodi combustion and steam injected turbine interests, and also for any energy imports we have into California, we have to buy greenhouse gas credits for. Now, the way the rules work is, since we're in what we call a metered subsystem, which is formed by NCPA, since we're involved with other municipalities, we're not allowed to offset our costs, or we're not allowed to give these credits away in lieu of, or to the Lodi Energy Center, for instance, because there's other members involved in that project. It's not all the same members. So we can't just go give it away to them. We have to use it for other purposes which benefit all of our ratepayers.
And were there any other ideas tossed around? I mean, these are all very solid ideas. I just didn't know, I mean, if there's anything, you know, just curious if there was anything else talked about.
In general, it's power purchase agreements and energy efficiency projects, because that all meets the spirit of the Assembly Bill 32.
I'm wondering if other cities are doing anything related to CNG or solar or some of those things that were talked about at the NCPA conference.
Oh, some of them are doing, solar, but that would be covered under what I was calling power purchase agreements for renewable energy. Yeah, they are using it for that as well.
But not actually establishing new...
No, because you see, there's another issue. You have public benefits funds that are coming in too, because we have a public benefits charge that we charge on our bill. But according to Senate Bill 1, we have to have a funding for that. And so we can't start mixing these pots together, because if I then try to say, okay, well, I'm going to spend this money on solar rooftop facilities to reimburse customers as part of SB 1, I can't go and claim it also for the greenhouse gas allowances and say, well, I spent that greenhouse gas allocation, because in a sense you're kind of double dipping. You have to keep the funds separate.
Okay.
That's why in the report I mentioned that I asked Mr. Wilkie to create a separate revenue account, which is a protected revenue account on this, so the monies can only be spent on certain projects. We can't spend this money on SB1 projects, and vice versa. SB1 funds we can't spend on these projects.
My last question is, did this go to the Utilities Commission before council?
No.
Is that just not common practice to have them look at these kinds of things?
No, we haven't in the past. Oh. Okay.
No, it's my understanding the Utility Commission is excluded from NCPA projects. They don't do anything with NCPA.
Interesting. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts that I'd like to share.
Sure.
The 4 kV, which is 4,000 volt to 12,000 volt conversion, you got about a $500,000 cost going forward on that.
Yep.
And one of the things that I was looking at with regard to that is if we use this bundle of money to make that conversion in one lump, We would see some savings going forward at some portion of the $40,000 a year. So, for instance, in year one, if we did it in a $100,000 increment, we would save about $8,000. But if we did it in a lump, we would save $32,000. And so over the course of 5 years, we could see about an $80,000 savings by utilizing these funds to undertake the 4 kV project. And one of the other things that I think that might make a difference is by doing the project all at one time, we may be able to get a better contract rate so that we could save some costs on the project also. It's a $500,000 project. And on a project that size, I think when we went to contract it, we could probably see some substantial savings. The other one, and this is kind of a complete reversal from where I was before, when I came on the job back in 2010 or early 2011, I had a conversation with city staff about the conversion of all of our street lights to LED, because there was a program available back then through a national company that got some kind of a tax credit and so on, and they would literally come in and change all your street lights. But I was advised at that time that we wouldn't be able to do that because we use the cost of operating those street lights as our maintenance of effort with SBCAG. So in other words, we have to put a certain amount of money in, and if we weren't putting the street light money in, we would then have to take general fund money to backfill it. And so that just wouldn't work for us. Now, I was talking to Brad actually yesterday here, and he said, you know, there's a new interpretation or a different interpretation now that basically says not only can you consider the energy, but you can also consider the cost of doing the retrofit. So at least in the near term, we would be able to have that same amount of money. And the other thing that occurred to me back then was that we have an inconsistent streetlight program in Lompoc. You know, some blocks have a mid-block light, some alleys have a mid-alley light, some don't have those. We also have areas, and we're all familiar with them, where we have higher crime, and everyone knows more light, less crime. So on streets and alleys in those problem areas, we could add some lighting to it. I got a file, and I've been kind of keeping track of it going forward, of cities who have gone into one of these programs and literally just changed every light in town. And some of the advantages are the immediate electrical savings. They do it through a bonding or lease funding process, and so basically their cost continues at the level they were at, or in some cases goes down a little. They eliminate most of the repair work for 10 to 15 years because they have new fixtures in place rather than going out and trying to maintain the existing fixtures. And then I think there are, just because of the way the systems work, I think there's some more advantages to them. And Patrick's from the big city, maybe he can expound on some of the benefits of changing. Obviously, the color change of the lights is a game changer for a community. The place just looks better. So, Chief?
Certainly the way the light casts itself is improved, and brighter does generally equal better experiences, lower crime. Some of the new technology out there is actually programmable, where you can adjust the number of lumens you're experiencing so that you can actually make areas that are higher crime areas, you can actually brighten them brighter than even what you're burning, maybe just your normal areas. And those can also be used for, you know, if you're in the middle of an emergency response, maybe you've had an accident in an intersection and you're able to light up that intersection more than than where you'd normally have it lit. There's a lot of good technology out there. I know I've looked at about 28 different companies, and not all of them with LED, some with other technologies, but even those among LED, there's a variety of products that are out there, and certainly worth investigation and application for what we have to do.
And the other thing that I've been working on kind of accidentally is, and I think I may have mentioned it before, the warden who's now left was very interested in participating in a solar project on the prison property. And what he had offered up was free use of property and free use of prison labor to build the project if there was a training program and certification for the inmates that participated in the project. And so I've talked to I don't know how many people about it, and about a month and a half ago I kind of got a hit from John Smith at Tartaglia Engineering over in, I think he's in San Luis Obispo, and he's involved with a solar group. So today he sent me, you know, kind of the disclaimer, and I called him back and I said, so what's this cost? And he said, based on preliminary discussions, this would be somewhere between 10 cents a kilowatt hour in the median price range and 15 cents a kilowatt hour in the high price range, which is a tremendous reduction from what solar cost, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years ago. And the other advantage is, because it would be on prison property, which is within the city limits, we wouldn't pay a transmission charge on it, so it's behind the meter to us. And, you know, they have the ability to build somewhere between 10 and 20 megawatts, obviously more than we need, but I think that's something else that we need, that bears a little more exploring. And I'd like the staff to kind of take a look at these three concepts and see how they pencil out. And, you know, Patrick's obviously had a lot of experience in the street lighting side, so he could bring a lot to the table, because it would be pretty exciting to be able to go through our entire community and put in new white lighting. And you don't really realize what a difference it makes. So I'll tell you my personal story. The light bulb in my closet burned out, and I said to my wife, let's try one of these LED lights. And we put the light bulb in, and I can now, in my closet, tell the difference between blue and black, dark blue and black slacks that I used to have to either look at the label or walk outside. And I noticed that this morning, and I went, wow. Now, it's a $13 light bulb, but, you know, so, yeah. Well, they were hung in the right place before. My wife took good care of me. So I'd like to see us take a look at the 4 kV to 12 kV and see if my anecdotal numbers actually pencil out right, number one. And, you know, we could get an idea of what kind of construction cost savings we could be, and staff could get in with Tartaglia Engineering and kind of quantify some of these ideas that they have with regard to solar, because that would be substantially less than that geothermal, I think, right?
No, not if it's going for
10 cents?
10 cents, that's $100 a megawatt hour.
Ah, so then it wouldn't be any cheaper.
$15 more.
Okay. Would the savings for being behind the meter be an advantage?
It would help close the gap in the price, yes. Because right now the transmission access charge is about $12 per megawatt hour, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, yeah, it would help close the gap.
Well, I think it'd be worth, we don't have to make a decision today necessarily. I think it'd be worth you guys to talk to these guys and take a look and see if they're blowing smoke or there's some reality in it.
Yeah. The other things I would just mention, I'm not trying to shut down the project or anything. I just want to mention that there are other things to consider on there. When you're building a large solar project like that, they're going to have someone that's going to manage the project and also have a scheduling coordinator, which there's not any here, so it would probably have to be an outfit like PG&E or NCPA, which they're going to have a cost also that they're going to charge you to be a scheduling coordinator. There's also renewable energy certificate costs that are involved there in getting the equipment registered with the California Electric Commission. So there's a lot of other fees that are involved on top of that base kilowatt hour charge that they might have gave you.
Well, I think what they're in the process of building several other large projects, so I think those are worked in, but again, surely not my area of expertise, and I'd just like to have everybody take a look at it before we go down the road of the other project, just in case it's better. And if it's not, a sheet of paper and didn't cost too much.
Okay.
So,
All right. I've also like an opportunity to respond to you regarding your two other comments. Regarding the 4 kV to 12 kV conversion project, you bring an excellent idea. The issue that we have with that is that this isn't such an easy project. We have about 8 areas throughout the city that need to be converted still. We have to do it so it's not as easy as going to set up in one area and doing it all. We have all the projects are staged, meaning they've all been planned, they've all been engineered. We just need to get the labor and equipment, materials procured, but we also have issues in doing all this simultaneously. We can't do it all simultaneously because there's a lot of outages that need to be coordinated for doing this type of work. And so what we typically need to do is, in order to take one, that's why we're doing them in smaller groups, is we take one small area out, we'll take it out for 8 hours a day, we'll do the work that we need to do in that area, and we backfeed another area from another source, and that source might be where we have to do another 12 kV conversion or in the future. So it's not quite that easy. It's a little labor limitation also, and also outages. But we can certainly, I can increase the funding to, I'd say, no problem with $200,000. If you guys want, if you would authorize that, that would be great. We certainly can do something like that. I just don't think we could do it all in 1 year with all the outages and with the existing manpower materials that we have.
well, maybe you could look at that and make a recommendation to us.
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to address regarding the lighting, we can certainly do more lighting. Right now, we're not limited by manpower on the lighting. We're limited by funds allocated to the project. So we can certainly beef that up if council wanted in the future to up the funding on that to 150, 200,000 a year. We've got the manpower to do that. That's the type of job that's perfect for what you were just saying. We can get to an area, take care of a whole street in one day, or I shouldn't say a whole street, but maybe a block or two in a day. We could take care of it very easily. We just are limited right now on our authorized funding for materials.
Well, it might be by going with a bond or going with a lease purchase that we can do it all in one lick and have those savings coming forward and look at where we don't have lighting and make those additions. So I just think, I'd like to have you guys take a little look at some of these and come back to us with more recommendations.
Okay.
And I think it's great that you got money.
Okay.
I wish the rest of the city had the same problem.
Okay.
City Administrator, do you have any questions? No, not yet.
No, I think that's pretty comprehensive, and we're just wanted to observe that we're talking about this is all to benefit the ratepayers, because in this city we've configured some costs that are borne by the ratepayer, that any of these investments do help buy down the rate, if you will, eventually.
And if they don't buy it down today, they prevent an increase tomorrow, which is really probably what we're looking for. Is there any other comments from the council at this time?
We have till when to spend?
There is no drop dead date on when you have to spend the funds. We just have to have a plan.
2020?
You can save it all up to 2020 if you want.
Do the whole city at once?
Well, I don't know if you'll have the manpower to do that, but all at once. But there's no obligation to spend the money. We just have to have a plan in place by June of this year, which that plan can be changed anytime we want. It's just we have to have a start. Yeah, we have to have a start. And we can amend it at any time.
Thank you, Marty.
You're welcome.
Okay, written communications. Huh? Okay. Well, public comment. Anybody want to talk about this? Nobody. Okay, public comment. Vote I guess from my standpoint, I'd rather give them a little more time to come back with some thoughts on the various ideas. I mean, what they were asking for here is to adopt their recommendation, and I'm not ready to adopt their recommendation until we have some more discussion on some choices. You almost got away.
Gentlemen, can you speak to the timeliness of this? Are you in a situation where we could go back and develop some more alternatives, or do you need some direction now?
Yes. We do need some direction now, and as I mentioned, we can always update these in the future, and we're certainly willing to investigate other alternatives, such as what the mayor had mentioned, escalating funding for the 4 kV conversion project. We can certainly do that.
Yeah, Mary Lynn, I think that would just take editing section 3 of the resolution. So we can, like you were saying, up that to $150,000, up to the amount of $150,000 each year, or even like you said, $200,000 each year. Marty?
Well, all I'm asking for today is $100,000 a year to be funded using the greenhouse gas proceeds for the 4 kV conversion project and for the LED project. Currently, those projects are funded via rates. So I'm just asking that they be funded through these greenhouse gas proceeds instead.
I guess from my point is I'd rather give them a couple of weeks to look at some of these alternatives and look at the possibility of doing a single funding source to switch out all of our lighting to LED with, you know, some of the abilities that Patrick talked about in the new LED system, and look at what it would look like if we accelerated the 4 kV to 12 kV and the cost savings there, because again, what I did was kind of anecdotal. You know, I think I'm right, but I want to make sure that we save $80,000 and then look at this solar option and see if it truly is something that would make sense versus the new Calpine option.
I think that they can do that, though. Well, at least the first part. I don't know about the solar part, but the first part they can do still with the passage of this resolution.
Let me go to the city administrator because he got his light on.
I was just going to add, I think that would take a lot more than a couple weeks. That would, I'd say, multi-month process if you're talking about a wholesale getting to the point where we have a good understanding and reviewing different products in the light of a good understanding. If you just want a thumbnail viability, we could probably do that within a couple weeks, but to have a presentation or getting to decision points is going to take us quite a bit longer.
I think what I was looking for is more of that thumbnail viability, if that's a direction that we need to look at, or if it's not a good idea. That's all. Councilmember Lingle.
Mr. Mayor, I think well, I'm going to make a motion. I'd like to move that we accept staff recommendations.
And a second.
Second.
Which recommendation?
That we accept the last page. Adopt resolution 5889, 14, approving the use of greenhouse gases allowance option proceeds.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to support that. Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Marilyn. Theoretically, I agree with the ramp up and looking at that 4 kV to 12 kV conversion as well, but by passing this resolution, does that preclude them from continuing that work? Why is that?
Doesn't preclude us from doing any additional work.
The maker of the motion would have to add that to the motion, because that's not what the motion is. The motion is to go forward with the staff recommendation. So if we want to do something beyond that, then the maker of the motion would have to include that.
Can we change the language in the resolution slightly that would allow that? Because, I mean, you understand the consensus, and you're...
I understand the consensus, but I personally think that all that would be necessary is for the council to convey to the city administrator to tell me to investigate these options. And that's what we'll do.
I can assure you, we're going to be investigating regardless of this item, so.
Okay, Mayor Lynn, that's on the record, so, and I am interested in that as well, but I will support the passage of the resolution.
I have a question.
Sure.
We have $540,000.
Yes.
Why can't we take the immediate gain and add the 100,000 onto the 412 kV changeout and put another 100,000 into the streetlight changeout? That still gives us 340,000 that we would have to go look at this.
All right, I didn't want to bring labor up. Larry Bean, Utility Director, and I didn't want to bring labor up, but currently and in past history, Marty can verify, it's been city staff that does this work. We haven't put it out to bid. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so if you now direct that we're going to put out work that city staff could bid, it's likely we're going to have a grievance from labor. That's what Mayor Lynn suggested. That's the only, we don't have enough people to suddenly do 5 times the amount of work they're doing. Marty's suggestion was to, instead of fund it by ratepayers' money, to use this money. It would save us, what, I don't know the exact figure, $40,000, I believe, from Marty's slide, a year. So yes, it would make sense if you could suddenly save all 5 years right now. That would save more money. But we're going to have a problem going out to bid with this, because this type of work has never been bid before. So we would definitely have to meet and confer with the union. That could hold it up. Same thing with the street lights. If we tried to buy all the street lights at once and do it all at once, I don't think we have a staff to do all of it. We have staff that could double up the number we're doing right now and get it done faster if you'd like to do that. That one might work with a change to that one. But the others, the solar, I think that's something, exploring the solar on the prison property, that's a project that Marty and I got to work on. There's no lines out to the prison from the city of Lompoc, no electric lines.
Correct.
So we saw that it can take a year or two to try to get PG&E to come to some agreement to let you run the electricity over their lines. So that's why I'm saying that that project could be done, but it's one we need to work on and need a good bit of time to get planning. So I would say we could modify speed up the LED streetlights. Speeding up the 4K to 12K conversion could be difficult. It has some little problems in it.
Well, I think, just because we've never contracted anything out doesn't mean we can't, and that's something the city administrator and you all could look at. There are benefits and liabilities to everything, and I don't profess to understand what they would be in the case of that. With regard to using the solar on the prison property, it is within the city limits, and we would have the ability to build a line to connect it if that was what we decided we needed to do. We wouldn't necessarily have to use PG&E's lines. Matter of fact, we probably wouldn't want to, because then it would be outside the meter, and we'd be back to paying a charge to carry the electricity, and we would lose that benefit. So, okay, well, with the city administrator's nod up and down, I guess I'm satisfied. I'm just looking to see if they all go out.
My motion stands.
I think what his motion stands, but with the understanding that the city administrator is going to look at these alternatives and come back.
So what was the motion again?
Staff recommendation.
It's staff recommendations that council adopt resolution 5889, parentheses 4, approving the use of greenhouse gas allowance auction proceeds.
Councilmember Lingle, would you be comfortable with adding the language to increase the or I guess decrease the amount of time for the LED street lighting retrofit projects, or I don't know, however that would be verbalized. I understand the issue with the 4 kV, 12 kV, so I understand that, and the solar's going to take a long time to look into, but for the LED, he said that there's the capacity to potentially do that.
Yeah, well, to do that, you would, if you would like to make a change to my recommendation, you'd simply increase the amount of funding.
That was what I said about 10 minutes
So
ago.
you could say 150,000, 200,000, whatever. It's up to you to decide how much you want to do. I would say 200,000 would probably be the maximum we can do. The reason why I was recommending going with that in lieu of the 4 kV additional funding right off is that's more immediate benefit. I don't have to take system outages. That only requires a simple 2-man crew. I don't have to have 4 or 5 guys out. I don't have to take out city blocks to do that type of work. It's something that we can do quickly.
So Councilmember Lingle, I would just recommend that you edit the section 3 on page 203 of the resolution to increase that amount, the up to amount from 100,000 to 200,000 each per year. Well, not each, I guess. 100,000 for the 4 kV to 12 kV and 200,000 for the LED streetlight retrofit per year.
Okay.
Would it be feasible, could I throw in that we would just do the 412 kV and the street light, section, 1, 2, 3?
What do you mean?
If we're going to pass the resolution, just section 1, 2, and 3, we would put all the money into immediate rate decrease here. With the conversion, we would divide the 540,000 in half, give half to the lighting, half to the 4 to 12 kV.
But again, that was the concern with the staffing. The capacity is essentially, we can spend $200,000. We have the manpower and the staffing to do that amount.
But they have forever to sell. There's no drop dead, but this would give you the assurance that you could finish these projects or at least have a good jump on it. It doesn't get us involved in Middletown, Pines, and everything else.
Middletown we already are involved in.
But not here.
City administrators now.
I'm a little concerned about adding to the complexity of the discussion, but I'd simply say one of the factors as we look at our options, not just with the technology of LED on streetlights, but the fact is we may have some proposals out there from certain companies that address, if not resolve, financing issues as well. So I'm not sure how that tangles this up that much more. As we're going to look at what potential solutions and the viabilities, those may include some financing proposals as well.
I'm back to where I originally was, which is I'd just like to let the staff come back to us with some recommendations on this, because I think there are some options that need to be looked at, and I think the city administrator has the skill set to look at those and come back to us with the thumbnail sketch in the near term.
Is a 2-week delay going to adversely impact you on?
No, 2-week wouldn't. To investigate things like the solar facility, that's going to take quite a bit of work because there we have to deal with right-of-way issues, how we're going to, the routing of the line. So that would take quite a bit of time to investigate that. In terms of the lighting, like I said, I'm not really clear on why the financing is being brought up, because we don't need the financing for the lighting. We've got the monies to do it, so I don't understand where financing is even coming into the equation.
You're asking for.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like
Not
to
asking for financing.
I'd like to call the question based on my
I
original
agree.
motion.
Okey doke.
Your original motion, which is the resolution as it stands.
Vote, please. Okay, I'm the last guy left out on that one, so that's okay. So that passes 4-1-0. Okay. I don't think so. I don't either. But you guys bought it, so it's okay with me. Okay, written communications.
Nothing.
Oral communications, last time for those of you in the audience to address us on any subject. Seeing no one rise, we'll close that and we'll come back to the council for requests, meeting reports, etc. Who wants to start?
Mary Lynn, I just wanted to make an announcement about an event that's taking place. As you know, I'm the appointee to the Central Coast Collaborative on Homelessness, and it's pretty exciting because they're a very active group, which is always refreshing, because many times we just talk and not a lot gets done, but this time it is. And so I just want to let you know, on February 24th, there's going to be a Homelessness Action Summit, and that'll be taking place at UCSB, again, Monday, February 24th. I will be there for the entire day at this event, representing the city as the policy council member, and they're going to be talking about what's working. Currently, there's a new policy that's working down in Los Angeles, which is called the Housing First model, which is essentially understanding detox is important, but really getting them into housing is the first step. And so anyway, there's a lot of models and theories that will be discussed, and some nationwide folks who have experience that will be there. So you're more than welcome to attend. Councilmember Lingo, I know you've had some interest. So February 24th is the Homeless Action Summit. That'll be taking place at UCSB from 7. There's a reception from 7:30 to 9:30, but there's events earlier in the day, so you can just ask me if you have any questions.
Oh, okay. A couple of things. One is I do want to thank both the Lompoc Record and Santa Barbara News Press doing a very good job on what's happening at the old hospital. I thought the 2 articles in the paper, and it's nice to have something positive in the Santa Barbara News Press about Lompoc. You know, have a hard time doing that. But I thought the article was good, and it gives the people an idea of a lot of the questions we've had. Also, I did go to the pinning of the new fireman at the fire department. And third is that I've had a lot of people here ask me, is there any way we can do something about the people walking across the bridge going west? And there's kids and everybody else on there. We may want to send some nasty letters to Caltrans or somebody to do something. It won't make any difference, but I've had several calls, and also they have a tendency to play games walking as you come to them. So I think that's something we may want to start making some comments on, because I don't know how many people go to Buellton, but I'm over there quite often. And in the afternoon, when they're walking back over there, it's getting dangerous, and especially with little kids and wheels and strollers.
I have no reports.
Let's see, over the past 2 weeks, I've been to, been to a Boys and Girls Club awards dinner in Santa Barbara. I attended a veterans meeting at the Veterans Building for the rehabilitation of the center. Attended a city council, or not a city council, a Chamber of Commerce Military Affairs meeting, and I was also at the pinning ceremony of one of our new firefighters.
Well, that's pretty good timing to answer Council Member Holmdahl's discussion. We had a discussion at the SB-CAG sub-regional on the 5th, and this was a look at the projects going forward. We have some money because of low bids on both the Union Valley Parkway and the Santa Maria River Bridge to do something with. SB-CAG staff proposed a number of additional projects. The board unanimously rejected those. We did unanimously agree that the next project up would be the sound walls for the Union Valley Parkway, because the opinion of everybody was that the project was uncompleted. The next one that I spoke to were 2 small projects, one in the city of Solvang and one in the city of Guadalupe, to provide some local traffic improvements, which are the next 2 measure projects. And then following those, there are 3 projects, 2 interchanges in Santa Maria and the Santa Maria River Bridge. Doreen Farr led off by saying that the Lompoc Bridge is just tremendously dangerous and something needs to be done about it, and it should be the next project up. Peter Adams said that, I said it, Mayor Buellton said it, Mayor Solvang said it, Mayor Guadalupe said it, the mayor of Santa Maria was not there. Her representative said, well, what about the interchange? And that didn't seem to be going anywhere, so he said, well, what about the land for the interchange? And we all kind of bought in on that. And then Supervisor Labanino chimed in and said, you know, Santa Maria's gotten all these projects and it's Lompoc's turn, and this is a serious, serious safety problem. So the sound walls are next, the two small projects, there's enough money in place to do all of those now, and then the 246 bridge will move up in the priority list to the next one. Yep.
Is that replacing the bridge or just a bike path, walk path?
Several things will be looked at. Number one will be whether a pedestrian lane can be added to the bridge. Number two, whether a separate bike and pedestrian bridge could be added. Or number three, whether they would just want to bite the bullet and move forward with another bridge, which would be on the north side of the existing bridge. And in our discussions with the hotel project, engineering staff verified that we have enough street width there so that if we're going to add a bridge, we can. And then on the other side of the bridge, it would be our right of way off the front of the park, which was one of the reasons why even the little moto park was put farther back to accommodate for that. Yes, sir.
I did it again. Very good, because that's the first time there's that many agreeable to do something for Lompoc, and I thought that's fantastic, because I think that the sad part about it too is the individuals walking over to there are going to a county facility also, and so the county's already got a liability on it, and I'm glad to see them get involved. Very good, good notice, and the public should know that.
And there's $300,000 that was originally allocated in measure to study whether we were going to have the bridge at Central Avenue or the bridge at 246, and this council said no, we're going to have it at 246 way back when, so that money is now allocated for the bridge, and there was 300 and something that was left over from the Allen Hancock bike path that's also been allocated to the project. On Sunday the 8th, I attended the digital bookmobile at the library. That was pretty exciting. Councilmember Starbuck and I did the proclamation on Sunday. On Monday the 10th, I did a welcome for the youth group event at the DeWeese Center. They were a bunch of fired up kids, so that was a good thing. On the 10th, I also went to Santa Barbara and met with both Salute Carbajal and Janet Wolf on behalf of the Mosby Project. That didn't really do much good, but it was a nice drive. Let's see, on the 12th, we all attended the P4 meeting at Vandenberg, and I don't think we got kind of the progress that we'd kind of hoped for, but good things are going forward, so there are things going on. The chamber mixer on the 13th, and I had the opportunity to speak on Andy Caldwell's show with regard to the Mosby Project on the 14th. This morning I had a teleconference with the same people that are doing the Chamber's website, which was why I asked about that. And I have been working with a couple more economic development prospects, and a couple of them are looking pretty good. At the meeting with regard to the Mosby Project, Supervisor Carbajal basically said that it was our responsibility to provide fields for the entire Lompoc Valley. So I pointed out that we maintain...
Mr. Mayor, do we need to add 5 minutes?
Yeah. Sorry.
I'll move.
I'll second. Everybody vote.
Maybe make it 10 minutes.
Too late. Okay, we extend 5 minutes. And what I pointed out was that we maintain 45 acres of recreation fields in the city of Lompoc. We maintain 184 acres of other grass, and we maintain 903 acres of open space and trails. The county, on the other hand, maintains 0 acres of fields in the Lompoc Valley for their 15,000 residents, and about an acre of grass at Megalito Park, and no other open space. So, being proactive, I want to make an offer to the county. We have, over next to the city, or to the county road yard, a piece of land that we own. Now, we didn't know we owned it a while ago, but we found it when the green map was printed, and Kevin has been nice enough to cause the person who was using the land and paying somebody else rent for it to now be paying us. It was a pretty good gig. Somebody else was collecting rent from a third party who was on our property. So there's 1.8 acres, which is on the back side of the county road yard. It is landlocked. We do not have access to the property other than through the county road yard. And it would be adequate for a soccer field. It's level and flat. So I would like to agendize an item to discuss offering this to the county so they can build a field to replace the one that they didn't want to have. And I'd be looking for a second and a third.
Maybe just a suggestion here, maybe a city administrator would want to call a county administrator and see what the thoughts would be.
I think this is a political thing, and we don't really want to insert him in the middle of it, frankly. So I'd be looking for a second and a third for this agenda item to discuss it and help the county with their sports field needs. Got to take a stand, you guys.
Well, I'm going to say, I know this is a sticky issue, and it's outside of, what's been put on the paper, but if it is worthless ground to us, why don't we just go ahead and give it to the county one way or the other? It is landlocked.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and second it, because that piece of ground is behind, the old Germany place, and I don't know how the city of Lompoc got it in the first place.
There's a rumor that we bought it from the county, but I couldn't confirm that. I didn't have time. Okay, that's everything for me, and we are there for the Lompoc. We got 3 people. It's just an agenda item.
Mr. Mayor, when did you want that brought back?
When a month or so, whenever you guys have time. The Lompoc City Council will adjourn to a regular meeting at 7:00 p.m. on March 4th, 2014. Thank you for joining us.